Chapter 306. They slept in the wild and cultivated for a day. In the afternoon of the next day, Luli put the coffin of the Dragon King into his interspatial ring and asked Mingyu to take him to the outside of the yeoman city. Yesterday, the three of them cleaned themselves in the river. Luli changed into a brocade robe and held a folding fan in his hand. He had transformed into a playboy. Mingyu and Yu Huashan changed their robes as well and became two escorts. Luli looked even more like a playboy. The three of them all wore the mithril golem mask, looking quite mysterious. Mingyu didn't release his bead of life. He just strode forward and arrived at the yeoman city in just an hour. It was almost dusk. The Shang dynasty of the Pavilion of Delicacy hadn't arrived yet, but there were already people waiting outside the city. They must have taken the Shang dynasty as well. Luli waved the folding fan in his hand and raised his head. His eyes were filled with arrogance. He was behaving like a playboy. It was getting dark. There were more than 40 or 50 people gathered outside the city. They must have taken iron-armored ships. The blazing sun slowly set in the west, leaving behind only wisps of dark red light. The entire land was illuminated in a dark red light. Swish, swish, from the west came a piercing sound, a black that was enlarging at a horrifying speed. The sound was getting louder and more ear-piercing. The black that was getting bigger and bigger. Soon, Luli and the others could see everything. Luli, Yu Huashan, and Yu Huashan glanced over. They were shocked. This was not an iron-armored ship. It was more like a castle floating in the sky. Average iron-armored ships were only about 300 feet long and more than 30 feet wide. This iron-armored ship was thousands of feet long and hundreds of feet wide. It looked more like a beast in the void. It was getting dark and the light was dyed red, which was even more shocking. The moving castle was floating to the south of the yeoman city. On the deck stood rows of warriors in red armors. Luli sensed them and was shocked. They were all warriors of the Eternal Realm. There must be at least hundreds of escorts on such a large iron-armored ship, and all of them were at the Eternal Realm. This was the strength of the 12 royal families. This was just a commercial ship. How many warriors of the Eternal Realm were there at the Pavilion of Delicacy? It was impossible to estimate. Whoosh! 5 imperishable realm martial practitioners flew down from the deck. After landing on the ground, they scanned the area and shouted. Those who board the ship hand over their tokens. Mingyu took out his token, and so did Luli and Yu Huashan. Mingyu walked over and handed over his token. An Eternal Realm warrior checked it and gave it back to Mingyu. The warrior waved his hand and said, "Go up." Mingyu flew up with Luli and the other two and landed on the deck. They were wearing mithril golem masks, but none of the escorts paid attention to them. Many escorts didn't even look at them. A peak imperishable realm martial artist who looked like a steward waved his hand and said, "Go to cabin 69. Don't cause trouble on the merchant ship and don't use force." Apart from the second and third floors, one could move around freely on the first floor. There are cultivation rooms, auction rooms, wine rooms, brothel rooms, and so on, but they all cost Xian crystals. Luli was taken to cabin 69 by an escort after the steward gave some instructions. It didn't take long for them to arrive. Luli and the other two went in to have a look. It was just a narrow room, just big enough for the three of them to sleep and cultivate. Luli didn't mind. Mingyu, on the other hand, felt embarrassed to explain. "Young master, I didn't know the cabin was so small. They have VIP rooms, but the price is doubled, so it doesn't matter." Luli was born poor. It was good enough that he could have his own cabin. He asked with curiosity, "I can understand that wine rooms are places to eat and drink, but what about brothel rooms?" Mingyu didn't understand either. Yu Huashan grinned and said, "Brothel. This merchant ship is quite well equipped." Luli touched his nose speechlessly. This merchant ship had everything to eat, drink, and play. There was even a place for cultivation and a brothel. Living on this merchant ship was no different from living in the city. It wouldn't be boring even if they lived here for a couple of years. Yu Huashan moved closer and said in a low voice, "Young master, how about I show you around later? You want to have a taste of the Central Plains girls?" "No." Luli waved his hand. He didn't discriminate against prostitutes. so he wouldn't go to a brothel. At the Thousand Island Lake, he didn't even lay his hands on Madame Yin, who was extremely beautiful. I wonder how it is at the Thousand Island Lake. Thinking of Madame Yin, Lu Li remembered by Xia Shuang and by Qiushua, Lu Yi, Zil Yin, and Yi Cha. He thought to himself that if everything went well this time, he would go to the ice abyss at the northern desert with the powerful warriors of the Lu family, and then go to the Thousand Island Lake. Everyone on the merchant ship had boarded. The huge merchant ship glowed in a soft white light as the shield was turned on. Then the ship whooshed toward the east like a shooting star. Lu Li felt depressed after sitting in the cabin for a while. He couldn't sit still since he had just boarded the ship. He called Yu Huashun and walked out. Mingyu didn't go with them. He was a cold man, and he only cared about cultivation. He didn't like noise, and he didn't like to get involved. When they walked out of the cabin, they noticed there were fewer escorts on the deck. Only dozens were standing in silence. There were people on both the front and back decks. Some were walking around casually, and some were going into several cabins. Lu Li held a fan in his hand and wandered around the ship like a foppish young master. He found the cultivation room, the auction room, the wine room, and the kiln room. These places were transformed from large cabins, which were very spacious inside. If it weren't for the fact that the iron-armored ship was flying fast, Lu Li would have thought he was in a small town. Walking to the deck, Lu Li looked at the mountains and rivers passing by in the distance and the endless wilderness. Somehow he felt at peace. After flying for a while on the iron-armored ship and finding a way to open the coffin of the Dragon King, Lu Li could get many treasures and mystical materials. After he sold the mystical materials, he could take the teleportation formation to the mystic armor region. On this thought, Lu Li was completely relieved. He stood on the deck for an hour and was ready to go back to cultivation. Right at that moment, an old man suddenly flew down from the second floor of the iron-armored ship and stood in front of Lu Li. Yu Huashun put his guard up at once. He looked at the man coldly. After making sure that he was at the noble lord realm, Yu Huashun was on high alert. "Don't be nervous." The old man cupped his fists and then pointed to a person on the second floor of the ship and said, "Our young lady wants to invite you up for a drink and to make friends." Lu Li looked to the second floor and saw a beautiful lady in a purple robe standing on the deck. The lady seemed to be in her early 20s. She was slim and pretty. At the moment, she was looking at Lu Li, but it seemed that the lady was drunk. Her eyes were hazy and her face was red. She was shaking. If it were someone else, they would be overjoyed. What a wonderful thing it was to have a date with a beautiful lady. But Lu Li wasn't interested at all. He even resisted out of instinct. He didn't want to cause any more trouble. He just wanted to get to the mystic armor region in peace. After some thoughts, he asked, "What is the surname of your young lady? I don't think I know her. Thank you for your kindness. I have other things to do." The old man was surprised. Then he moved his lips. A voice came to Lu Li's mind. "Young master, the surname of our young lady is not important. What is important is that she likes you. As long as you can spend one night with our young lady, you will get 5 million Xian crystals." 5 million Xian crystals? Lu Li's pupils contracted. He was shocked. It was not that he was scared by the 5 million Xian crystals. It was that he didn't expect that someone would use Xian crystals to buy one night with him. What was he doing to sell his body for Xian crystals? Chapter 307. Lu Li didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was being bought with Xian crystals for a night. He had the potential to be a gigolo. He wasn't angry, so he wouldn't be tempted. The lady was clearly drunk, and she was just looking for a toy. Lu Li was not that despicable. He wouldn't be tempted even if it was 5 billion Xian crystals, let alone 5 million. He indifferently said, "Sorry, I have something else to do. Let your lady find someone else." The old man's expressions turned cold. He moved his lips, and another voice came to Lu Li's mind. "Young master, my lady is of noble status. It is your honor that she likes you. Do you think the Xian crystals are too little?" On hearing this, Lu Li's expressions turned cold as well. He stared at the old man and said, "I will give you 20 million Xian crystals to let your lady wash my feet. How about that?" Yu Huashun sensed something wrong with Lu Li's tone. He was filled with killing intent and shouted, "What? Do you want to fight me?" There were escorts on the deck. They all looked at Yu Huashan, but they didn't come over. The old man sneered and said, "Very well, punk, you have guts." The old man flew up. Luli didn't even look at him. He walked back to his cabin. As soon as he left the deck, a lady in purple flew down and stopped in front of Luli. Luli stopped and looked at the lady coldly. The old man also flew down and stood behind the lady. The lady was drunk and her eyes were blurred. She stared at Luli from head to toe and laughed. She said, "Little brother, you have a bad temper and you are so arrogant. You want me to wash your feet? Do you have a lot of Xian crystals? If you can give me 100 million Xian crystals, I will wash your feet for you." It was hard to reason with a drunk person. Luli was disgusted as well. He said coldly, "Move. I have something to do, and I don't want to waste time with you. Otherwise, I will call the escorts." The young lady's eyelashes were very long. When her eyelashes trembled, she had an oval face. When she smiled, she was as charming as a fox. She tilted her head and said with a smile, "Go ahead and shout. I'll see who dares to come over. Little brother, I forgot to tell you, the commander of this ship is my grandpa. Do you think the escorts dare to offend me?" Luli was surprised. He didn't expect to run into a playboy lady. She must be from the pavilion of delicacy. No wonder she dared to mess around on the commercial ship. Yu Huashan frowned. He had just boarded the ship and this happened. What an unlucky year. The captain should be at least at the peak of the noble lord realm. This young lady had an esteemed status. If he were to offend her, he might not be able to sit on this merchant ship anymore. Seeing that Luli didn't say anything, the lady in purple giggled again. She even slid her hand over Luli's chest and said, "Little brother, go and have a drink with me, and I will let you go. How about that?" Luli stepped back. He was even more disgusted. He looked at the escorts on the deck and shouted, "People of the pavilion of delicacy, there's a crazy lady here harassing me. Are you not going to do anything?" Luli's voice was so loud that even Mingyu was alarmed. He rushed out from the cabin. Many people in the cabins also came out to watch the show. Several escorts walked over from the distance. One of them looked at the lady in purple, cupped his fists, and said with a bitter smile, "Lady Qi, please go back. Otherwise, the captain will punish us again." "Piss off." Lady Qi glared at the escort, looked at Luli coldly, and said, "Little brother, do you really have to be so heartless?" Luli's expression was hidden by the golem mask, but his eyes were cold. He said in a cold voice, "I don't talk to drunk people. Let's talk after you sober up." Okay. Lady Qi sneered. She flew up to the second floor. The onlookers gradually dispersed. Luli brought Yu Huashan and Mingyu back to the cabin. "Close the door and don't see anyone," Luli ordered as soon as he got in. Luli almost got into trouble again after he wandered around. He didn't want to cause more trouble. He planned to cultivate here for a couple of months and not go out until they arrived at the City of Heaven's Roars. Mingyu nodded and locked the door from the inside. Yu Huashan thought about it and asked, "Young master, do you think someone from the Pavilion of Delicacy has recognized us and sent this Lady Qi to test us? Otherwise, how can a young lady be so dissolute?" "I don't know." Luli shook his head. Lady Qi's behavior was comparable to Madame Yan's. She was a dissolute lady. But Luli didn't know if there were some big shots from the Pavilion of Delicacy behind this. Luli didn't think too much about it. He quietly began to study the memory fragments of the demon. Mingyu and Yu Huashan waited for a while, making sure that nothing was going on outside. They closed their eyes and began to cultivate as well. For the rest of the time, Luli ate and slept in the cabin. He even used a chamber pot to relieve himself. Apart from that, he spent the rest of his time studying the memory fragments of the demon. Mingyu and Yu Huashan did the same. Mingyu never went out. Yu Huashan would go out to buy some hot food every now and then. He spent the rest of his time cultivating in the cabin. Little White was the most carefree. It ate, slept, and ate. Luli didn't let it wander around, and it was very obedient. Half a month had passed. That Lady Qi never showed up again, which put Luli's mind at ease. It seemed that Lady Qi was just messing around when she was drunk. The commander of the merchant ship must have taught her a lesson so that she wouldn't mess around again. Finally, I understand it completely. After another 6 days, Lu Li opened his eyes in joy. He had understood all the memory fragments of the demon. He had the theory. Now he just needed to put it into practice. The cabin was too small for him to do anything. It was even more impossible to go to the deck. If Lu Li got off the ship, he wouldn't be able to get back on. There was only one way for Lu Li to go, to the cultivation room inside the ship. There was a large drill ground in there, with inhibition formations all around. No matter how hard he tried to cultivate in there, he wouldn't damage the merchant ship. Lu Li was burning with anxiety. He couldn't sit still any longer. He told Yu Huaxin, and the latter went to make arrangements. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Yu Huaxin came back. He asked Mingyu for 2 million Xian crystals to cultivate in the cultivation room for 2 hours. One day would cost 120,000 Xian crystals, which was a high price. This amount of Xian crystals was nothing for Lu Li. He asked Mingyu for 2 million Xian crystals and left with Yu Huaxin. At the cultivation room, Lu Li handed over the Xian crystals for 2 days and went into a spacious cabin. It was about 1,000 square feet, just enough. Whoosh! First, Lu Li released his apparition skill. He generated more than a dozen clones and moved around in the cabin. Then, Lu Li tried to integrate the mirror image profound meaning according to the method in the memory fragments of the demon. However, after several tries, he could only generate more than a dozen clones. There was no improvement or change. He tried again and again. Every now and then, he would stop to think and then go on. Lu Li was so engrossed in it that he forgot to eat or sleep. He only woke up when his steward walked in 2 days later. "Time's up," the steward said with a straight face. Lu Li didn't go out. He said in a deep voice, "I want to cultivate for another 10 days. 2 million Xian crystals, right? I will give it to you." "I am sorry." The steward shook his head and said, "This cultivation room has been booked. You cannot cultivate anymore." Lu Li had just cultivated for 2 days. He had only scratched the surface of many things. This was the critical moment. How come he could not cultivate? He asked after a pause. "Is there no other big cultivation room? I will pay a high price." "No." Before the steward could say anything, a pleasant voice of a lady came from outside. A pretty girl in purple showed up. She leaned against the door, looked at Lu Li, and said with a smile, "There is only one such big cultivation room, and I booked it for a month. Buddy, if you want to cultivate, you can have a drink with me. I will give it to you for free. How about it? Is a good deal, right?" Chapter 308. To be honest, this Lady Qi was good-looking. She was not as pretty as by Qiushua, not as quick-witted as by Xia Shuang, not as flirtatious as Madame Yan, but she had a kind of foxy charm. Her eyelashes were long, and so were her legs. She had a typical foxy face. Her eyes were full of playfulness, which made her smile even more attractive. Her clothes were revealing as well. Many parts of her purple dress were hollowed out. Her fair and round thighs and smooth belly could be seen. Her neckline was low. A deep cleavage could be vaguely seen. One could imagine how full she was. Clearly, she booked the cultivation room to target Lu Li. She didn't resort to brute force. She used an above-board method so that Lu Li couldn't do anything unless he stopped cultivating. Lu Li looked at Lady Qi, who was leaning against the door, and asked in a deep voice, "Just 1 glass of wine? I can cultivate for free." Lady Qi tilted her head and said after some thoughts, "1 glass of wine for a day. You can cultivate for 3 days after 3 glasses. Later, if you want to continue cultivating, you could drink with me." "Just drinking? Nothing else?" Lu Li was still worried. "Huh," Lady Qi giggled. She rolled her eyes at Lu Li and said, "Are you really that desperate for me? Just 1 glass of wine." "Okay." Lu Li nodded and walked out. Since this Lady Qi was the granddaughter of the commander of the merchant ship, she wouldn't do anything rash. Otherwise, she would have done it already. Lady Qi walked out of the cultivation room first, and Lu Li followed her. Seeing Yu Huaxin waiting outside, Lu Li said in a deep voice, "Wait here. I will come down after I have a drink with Lady Qi." Yu Huaxin answered, "Okay, young master. I will wait for you down there." The conversation between Lu Li and Yu Huashen was meant for Lady Qi to hear. Yu Huashen meant that if Lady Qi did anything rash, Yu Huashen would go up to Lu Li. Let's go. Lady Qi looked back with a smile. She kicked on the ground and flew up. Lu Li followed her up and went to the deck of the second floor. The second floor was much smaller than the first floor. There were fewer cabins. Every room was several times larger than the first floor. Here, the Xian crystals were doubled. Naturally, the treatment was better. Lu Li glanced over and saw many maids walking around with delicious food in their hands. Lady Qi swayed her plump buttocks as she walked in front of Lu Li. From time to time, she would look back and smile at Lu Li. Lu Li felt like he was in the wild following a vixen. After walking past the cabin door suddenly opened and a handsome young man walked out. When he saw Miss Qi, he immediately put on a flattering smile and reached out to hug her. He said, "Qi Qi, I missed you so much." The smile on Miss Qi's face froze. She stretched out her long leg and kicked the child directly into the cabin. She scowled and said, "Get lost. If you appear in front of me again, I'll destroy you." "You're just a piece of trash." Lu Li stopped and frowned. A glint of disgust appeared in his eyes. He almost wanted to fly down. From their words and actions, it could be seen that this young Lady Qi was a real debauchee. She had an affair with that young master and even slept with him. She even complained that he did not last long enough. This was a woman who could marry anyone. Lu Li had been influenced by Lu Ling since he was a kid. He was a bit conservative in his thinking. When Yu Huaxin asked him to go to the brothel room, Lu Li refused at once. Seeing that Lu Li stopped, Lady Qi looked over. She smiled and said, "Let's go, little brother. Don't you want to cultivate?" Lu Li suppressed his unhappiness and followed her indifferently. Eventually, he followed Lady Qi into a cabin. The decorations inside were luxurious. There were 2 small square tables made of gold with wine and food on them. 2 maids were kneeling on the ground. Lady Qi walked in naturally and sat down behind a golden table. She saw Lu Li standing at the cabin door, hesitating. She looked up and laughed. "What is it? Are you afraid? That I will drug you and rape you? Don't worry. I am not that immoral. I just like to conquer men, especially men like you who are like wild horses." Conquer men? Lu Li wanted to touch his nose, but he forgot he was wearing the mithril golem mask. Even though there were many powerful women in the world, such as Ghost Snake Granny and Madame Yin, most of the powerful warriors were men. In this world, only the powerful were respected. Men dominated the world, and women were often subservient. Therefore, in most cases, it was men conquering women, not women conquering men. This made Lu Li feel uncomfortable. Now that he was here, he might as well have a few drinks. Lu Li walked in with his teeth clenched. They knelt behind another golden table. 2 maids poured them a goblet of blood-red liquid. Lu Li took a look and asked, "Is this wine?" "Yes." Leaning against the golden table, Jiang Qiling smiled gently and said, "This is called Bloody Rose. It is a very strong wine. Without using Xian energy to force it out, even a man with a good capacity for liquor cannot drink more than 10 goblets. You're freaky, and so is the wine you drink." Lu Li murmured to himself. He picked up the goblet, but didn't know how to drink. He was wearing the mask. What if he was seen through if he took it off? Seeing Lu Li hovering in midair with the goblet in his hand, Jiang Qiling said with a sneer, "Take off your stupid mask. This mithril golem mask is of a low level. Usually, disciples of big families can see through it when they have learned the mystique breaker. For example, I can see your face." Lu Li was shocked and asked, "You can?" Jiang Qiling nodded. Her ring glowed as she took out a pen and paper. She began to draw on the white paper. In the time for 1 incense stick to burn, a portrait of a person was drawn. Lu Li trembled when he saw it. Jiang Qiling's drawing skills were excellent. The person she drew was vivid. It was Lu Li standing on the deck of the iron-armored ship, looking into the distance. Even though only half of his face was drawn, it was vivid and lifelike. It was the same as Lu Li's, even the charm. Jiang Qiling put away the pen, shrugged, and said, "How about it? Do you believe me now?" Lu Li nodded and looked at the 2 maids. Jiang Qiling waved her hand, and the two maids left. She even closed the cabin door. Luli took off his mask, picked up his goblet, toasted to Jiang Qiling, and said, "First." Luli gulped it down. The wine was mellow and tasty. He nodded to himself, thinking the wine was just so. He wanted to pour himself another goblet. However, at that moment, he suddenly felt a surge of heat coming from his abdomen. Soon, it spread throughout his body. He felt like he was on fire, and his face turned red. His head felt a little dizzy, and his body swayed slightly. "This wine is strong." Luli grabbed the golden table to steady himself and said. He thought he was fine just now. He didn't know it was so strong. Ha ha ha. Chapter 309. Forcing the wine out with Xian energy would be a breach of etiquette. Therefore, usually, warriors would either not drink or they wouldn't use Xian energy to force the wine out. Luli could not force the wine out with Xian energy. So, he had to either leave or wash Jiang Qiling's feet. Wash her feet? To wash a woman's feet, a slutty one at that, was harder than killing Luli. Now, one goblet of wine could only allow him to cultivate for a day. Luli was not willing to leave just like this. He made up his mind, picked up another goblet, and gulped it down. He didn't believe that he would pass out. As long as he was still standing, he could jump down to the second floor at any time and ask Yuhuashen to carry him back. He didn't stop. He poured another goblet of wine at a horrifying speed, gulped it down, and kept on. In the time for several blinks, Luli had poured 5 goblets of wine and gulped them all down quickly. He wanted to drink as much as he could before the effects of the wine came back, and then jumped down to the second floor. Jiang Qiling was scared. She was telling the truth. The Bloody Rose was one of the strongest kinds of wine at the Central Plains. The best drinker, she knew, could only drink 9 goblets. Luli didn't seem to be a good drinker. How come he had drunk 6 goblets, and he was still standing? Bang, Luli wanted to pour more wine, but he couldn't control his hands and feet. The jug of wine fell on the golden table. His face turned red, his neck and the skin all over his body. He tried to open his eyes, but he couldn't. He breathed heavily, moved his lips, pointed at the table, and said, more wine, 10 more goblets for me." Jiang Qiling didn't move. She shook her head and said, "Man, you can't drink anymore. You are drunk. More." Luli's tone suddenly turned cold, leaving no room for negotiation. He opened his eyes, which were bloodshot and ferocious. His qi and energy grew stronger as well. Jiang Qiling suddenly felt it was not a young man sitting in front of her, but a powerful wild beast. "Fine. Why are you so angry? Let me see how much more you can drink." Jiang Qiling pouted. She got up, took out 10 cups, and poured them all for Luli. Then she sneered and said, "If you can finish it all, I'll allow you to cultivate for free for 20 days. Whoosh, whoosh, Luli breathed heavily. He closed his eyes and lowered his head. His facial expression became ferocious. The reason why he didn't fall down was because of his strong willpower. How terrifying was his willpower? The demons had been attacking his soul for 3 days and 3 nights without being able to destroy it. Those 3 days and 3 nights were like torture in hell. He had survived that kind of pain, so how could a little alcohol numb his nerves? Hold on, I can't get drunk. I have to drink it all. Luli's mind was filled with such thoughts. His strong willpower was fighting against the drowsiness coming from his soul. His hand trembled slightly. Then he grabbed a glass of wine with lightning speed, tilted his head back, and poured it into his mouth. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. A drunk person's nerves would often be paralyzed. Their soul would not be able to control their body, and their body would also become sluggish. She was surprised that Luli drank a goblet of wine so quickly and accurately. Things that surprised her continued to happen. Luli rested for a while and suddenly opened his eyes. He drank another goblet as fast as lightning. This time he didn't rest. After he drank another goblet, he couldn't stand it anymore. He trembled and leaned against the wall behind him. 9 goblets. Luli had drunk 9 goblets in total. He was the best drinker Jiang Qiling had ever seen. Also, even though Luli was leaning against the wall, he wasn't completely drunk. The muscles on his face were still trembling, and he was struggling to sit up. Luli didn't use any Xian energy to force himself to drink. Jiang Qiling was sure of this. Luli was intoxicated after the first goblet. She could tell from this that Luli was not a good drinker. But how could he drink 9 goblets of bloody rose? Jiang Qiling was confused. How could Luli stay conscious after drinking so much wine? Roar! From Luli's throat came a beast-like growl. He sat up abruptly and opened his eyes again. This time, there were more streaks of blood in his eyes, which made him look scarier. His expression was ferocious, like a wounded beast. He grabbed 2 wine glasses with both hands and poured the wine into his mouth. 2 glasses for glasses, 6 glasses, 7 glasses, 16 goblets. Luli drank 16 goblets of wine in total. He grinned and said with misty eyes, "Lady Qi, you said 20 days. Don't go back on your word." "Goodbye." Luli groped on the table for a while, grabbed his mithril golem mask, and put it on his face. After he put the mask on, he pressed on the golden table to stand up. Then he staggered out and bumped into the cabin door. He fumbled around for a long time before he opened the door and walked to the railing outside the cabin. Then, he fell head first and directly smashed into the first floor. Yu Huaxin hurried over, carried Lu Li into the cabin. Jiang Qiling didn't come out, nor did she check to see if Lu Li would pass out. She sat in the cabin for a long time before the astonished expression on her face calmed down. Finally, she spat out a few words. What a strong willpower! Abnormal. Not even her grandpa, a powerful warrior at the peak of the noble lord realm, could drink 16 goblets of bloody rose without using Xian energy. What was more, Luli could talk to her after he was done. He put on his mask and walked out of the cabin. It is said that a man with strong willpower can fight against the numbness and invasion of wine. He can keep himself sober. Jiang Qiling remembered a saying of a powerful warrior. She didn't believe it before, but now she was convinced. She had been drinking for 5 years, and this was the first time she had seen such a freak. He really is a wild horse. Interesting. Jiang Qiling remembered the first time she saw Lu Li on the deck. Lu Li was young, and he was dressed like a playboy. But Jiang Qiling, who had seen many people, could see through his disguise at once. Lu Li had gone through so many hardships when he was a kid. He had gone through so many things and killed so many people. He had been an island owner and commanded many powerful warriors. In the end, he had become the leader of the Thousand Island Lake and the most powerful force at the northern desert. Cultivation could change one's temperament. A man's temperament would change according to his identity. The temperament in his bones could not be concealed. Jiang Qiling could tell at first glance that Lu Li was a strong wild horse. Little did she know that he was even stronger than she had imagined. Strong. Chapter 3:10. Lu Li slept for a day and a night. When he woke up, his stomach was still tumbling. It took him 4 hours to recover. He was so drunk that he passed out. But he still remembered clearly that she promised him 20 days of free cultivation after he drank 16 goblets. After he ate something, he went to the cultivation room. The steward seemed to have received an order from Jiang Qiling, so he let Lu Li in. Lu Li began to cultivate in the room. He had learned everything about the demon's memory. Now, he only needed to put it into practice. After 2 days of cultivation, he had a rough idea. A powerful warrior used his body to release a profound sword skill. Lu Li didn't need to study the sword intent of the sword skill. All he needed to do was to simulate the sword moves bit by bit and release the skill. It was easy to say. After all, Lu Li had all the memory of the demon releasing the skill, and he had figured out every detail. Theoretically speaking, there should be no problem. Not having a problem was actually the biggest problem. Lu Li stayed in the cultivation room for 15 days. He ate, drank, and went to the bathroom in there. He tried everything he could, but to no avail. All he could do was generate more than a dozen clones. Lying in the corner of the cultivation room, Lu Li chewed on some food and drank some water. He frowned and thought, what is wrong? Can't I release this skill without learning the mirror image profound meaning? Lu Li murmured, Since there was no progress after such a long time, then he must be on the wrong track. At this rate, he would be stuck in a dead end and would never be able to get out. Another direction? Another way? Lee's eyes glowed. He thought for a while, ate the food in his hand, and sat with his legs crossed. He wanted to change his direction and try to make the number of clones more than 60. After his apparition mirage mystic skill had reached its limit, he could create more than 100 clones. He wanted to achieve this condition first. 5 days later, Lee's body suddenly glowed. Then he divided into 2 and then 4. In the end, he had 100 clones. 100 Lees were moving around in the cultivation room. It was so dazzling that it was impossible to tell which one was the real one. That being said, just because he couldn't see it with his eyes didn't mean he couldn't see it with his spiritual will. What was more, Lee's clone was following Lee. It could not fly around in all directions like the demon skill. In 5 days' time, Lee had almost mastered the apparition Xian skill to the ultimate level. At its peak, the Xian skill could generate more than 100 clones. Now that Lee could generate 100 clones, he was very close to the peak. Lee had been studying for a long time, but he could only generate more than a dozen clones. Now, in merely 3 days, he could generate 100. It was not that Lee's power of understanding had become stronger. It was all thanks to the demon. The demon stole the Xian skill from Lee's soul and then studied it himself. He had more than 60 clones. In the memory fragments of the demon, there were ways to improve the clones. Lee studied according to the memory fragments. Naturally, he made rapid progress. Not bad, not bad. Lee's clones disappeared one by one. Lee came back with satisfaction. At least, he had gained something during the 20 days of closed-door cultivation. He could generate more than 100 clones. What he needed to do now was to integrate the mirror image profound meaning to make his clones more real. Not even noble Lord Realm warriors could tell that he was real, and he could control his clones to fly in all directions. As long as there is a breakthrough, I will be able to learn it sooner or later. Lee clenched his fists. He sat in the corner, took out some food, moved the mask over his head, and revealed his mouth to chew. During this period of time, he had been completely immersed in his cultivation and had forgotten that 20 days had already passed. Squeak, squeak. After a while, the cabin door was opened. The steward walked in and said indifferently, "Young master, it is time for your cultivation." Time? Lee was still sitting in the corner, chewing his food. He looked up at the steward and then to the cabin door. As he expected, he saw a pretty girl. Jiang Qiling was here. She was still leaning against the door. She was surprised to see Lee squatting in the corner and chewing his food. His hair was disheveled, and he was dressed like a beggar. She had seen people who were hard-working, but it was rare to see someone as crazy as Lee. Lee didn't seem to be in need of Xian crystals. He had 2 noble Lord Realm warriors with him. His background must be extraordinary. How could he be so hard-working? I will go out now. Lee finished all the food in his hand, put on his mask, and stood up. Jiang Qiling and the steward walked out as well. When Lee walked out, Jiang Qiling covered her nose and said, "Man, you stink." Ha ha ha. Lee laughed and said casually, "A man must have a smell. That is more like a man, isn't it?" Lee strode to the wine room where there was a bathroom. He cleaned up and put on a clean robe. Then he walked out in comfort. Jiang Qiling was waiting for him outside. She was wearing a red dress. It wasn't too revealing, but it was tight. Her voluptuous body outlined an alluring curve. Her lips should have been smeared with rouge, which was exceptionally bright red. Coupled with her snow-white skin and seductive facial features, it gave people a very strong visual impact and a very breathtaking feeling. On the walkway nearby and on the deck, many men kept glancing at Jiang Qiling with lust and greed in their eyes. Jiang Qiling ignored those looks. She smiled like a fox, looked at Lee, and said, "Man, do you want to cultivate for free again? Oh, I forgot to tell you. I have booked the cultivation room for a year." Ha ha. Lee rolled his eyes. The commander of this ship was Jiang Qiling's grandpa. Would it make a difference if she booked it or not? He smoothed his hair that was still wet and asked, "You want to drink again?" "No problem. I can hold my liquor well. Also, don't call me man. It's not a nice name. You can call me Young Masterly." "Young Masterly?" Jiang Qiling tilted her head and smiled again. She shrugged and said, "Come with me. We won't drink this time. Of course, I don't do things that force others. You can rest assured." "Okay." Luli nodded after some thoughts. He followed Jiang Qiling to the second floor and entered her cabin. It was filled with delicacies and bloody rose liquor. Two maids were on their knees, waiting on the side. Luli waved his hand to ask the two maids to leave. Then he took off his mask and began to eat without saying anything. He acted as if he was in his own home. He had been eating rations for so many days. Why would he refuse such delicacies? Jiang Qiling sat across from Luli, resting her chin on her hands. She looked at Luli eating and drinking without saying anything. Luli paid no attention to Jiang Qiling. After he was full, he wiped his hands with a towel. He looked up at Jiang Qiling and said, "I am done, Lady Qi. Bring it on. I'm only selling my skills, not my body. Anything else is negotiable." "Ha, ha," Jiang Qiling's eyelashes quivered. Her eyes turned into crescent moons, the standard eyes of a fox. Her red lips curled up into an alluring smile. She said softly, "What if I insist on buying your body? Are you going to sell it or not? Young Master Lu?" "Young Master Lu?" Luli squinted. A glint of coldness rose in his eyes, and he was filled with killing intent. Chapter 311. There were two meanings in knowing his identity. One was that she knew he was a disciple of the Lu family and everything that happened at the Dan City. The other was that she only knew he was at the Dan City, but not that he was a disciple of the Lu family. Luli thought about it and decided to sound her out. The murderous intent died down. He squinted at Jiang Qiling and said, "Young Master Lu? I am Young Masterly." "Ha ha ha," Jiang Qiling laughed out loud. She was like a dancing butterfly, charming and enchanting. After a while, she said, "Young Master Luli, I am from the Pavilion of Delicacy. The Northern Central Plains is the territory of the Pavilion of Delicacy. If I want to investigate someone, there is nothing I can't find at the Northern Central Plains. I am curious. Didn't you carry a coffin into the Wicked Sorcery Mountain? How did you get out?" It's okay, it's okay." Luli was relieved. Jiang Qiling only knew what happened at the Dan City and the Wicked Sorcery Mountain, but not that he was a disciple of the Lu family. After a moment of silence, Luli didn't answer her directly. Instead, he said, "Everyone has their own secrets. I don't want to tell you." "Okay, then I won't force you." Jiang Qiling picked up the bloody rose and took a sip. Her lips were red to begin with. Now, they were even redder, which gave her a different kind of charm. Suddenly, she smiled again and comforted Luli. "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone." Luli waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. You can tell them. I don't care." "You don't care?" Jiang Qiling squinted her eyes like a fox. She said with a sneaky tone, "Aren't you afraid that someone will covet the treasures in the coffin? Aren't you afraid that someone will ask you how you got out of the Wicked Sorcery Mountain? What if some powerful warriors come after you?" Luli poured himself a cup of tea, took a sip, and said leisurely, "Do you want me to be afraid? Or do you want me to be afraid? Or do you think you have something on me? Or do you think you have something on me? Do you want to threaten me?" "Jiang Qiling, this is not fun. Don't make me look down on you. I have died many times since I was a kid. I have killed many people, and I have been chased by many. I'm not even afraid of death. So what do I have to be afraid of?" Luli's words were gentle and emotionless, but his words had an inexplicable magic that made people believe him. Jiang Qiling looked at Lu Li's well-defined face and his confident eyes. The smile on her face froze. Somehow, she felt ashamed of her inferiority. After she received Lu Li's information, she was quite excited and wanted to use it to threaten Lu Li. Just as she had said, she liked to conquer men. She felt a sense of accomplishment when she saw proud men prostrate themselves before her. Or perhaps this was the only way she could feel that life was meaningful and numb herself. At this moment, she suddenly felt despicable. Luli was only 16 years old, 5 years younger than her. However, this young man had gone through a lot of hardships. He could have 2 servants of the noble lord realm. If it were anyone else, they would have been arrogant and become a playboy, eating, drinking, having fun every day, seducing beautiful women, and enjoying life. But not Lu Li. He cultivated in the cultivation room for 20 days and didn't come out even once. Who would have thought that Lu Li had so many Xian crystals and treasures on him? That he had 2 powerful warriors of the noble lord realm with him. Jiang Qiling thought she was pretty enough to make many men fall in love with her. But Lu Li didn't. Instead, he drank 16 goblets of bloody rose in order not to succumb to her. Relying on his strong willpower, he walked out and fell down 1 level. She could tell that Lu Li liked pretty girls. The way she dressed up today made Lu Li's eyes light up. It meant that her beauty was acceptable to Lu Li. But that was all. She lowered her head and said nothing for a long time. Suddenly, she lost interest. It was not that she didn't want to conquer Lu Li, but she felt she was not good enough for him. A man as proud and aloof as a pine tree would not succumb to her. He wasn't even afraid of death. How could he let go of his dignity and pride and succumb to a slut like her? She looked up helplessly and said to Lu Li, "I am sorry, young Master Lu. I apologize for what I did before. From now on, you can cultivate for free. That is my compensation. From now on, I will not harass you anymore." Lu Li was taken aback by her change in attitude, and she even apologized to him formally. He looked into her eyes, but she looked away at once. She lowered her head like a little girl who had done something wrong, not knowing what to do. Lu Li sighed. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he took a sip of tea and said, "I can tell that you used to be a good girl. I don't know what happened to you to make you like this. What I want to say is if you don't love yourself, nobody in the world will love you. The past is the past. If you cannot let it go, you can choose to commit suicide. In this way, you can be free. If you don't want to commit suicide or you don't have the courage to do so, then let it go. Life has to go on. Happiness is one day and pain is another. Why do you have to tire yourself out? Alcohol can paralyze you for one night, but can it paralyze you for the rest of your life? When you let it go, you will find that the world is still a beautiful place." Lu Li's words were sharp and pointed to her heart. It was as if he had seen through her mind. Jiang Qiling trembled, and then tears ran down her cheeks. She didn't say anything. She just cried silently. The tears dripped down from her chin and hit the floor, making a clear sound. After a while, she looked up, shook her head, and said with tears in her eyes, "Let it go? How can I let it go? He is dead. He was forced to death by my father. He was the man I loved the most, but he was forced to death by my father. He jumped off a cliff and died with everlasting regret. How can I let it go? Tell me how." "I knew it," Lu Li sighed. There was a tragic story behind Jiang Qiling. She must have humiliated herself to get back at her father. At the same time, she was punishing herself to atone for her lover's death. Or she was numbing herself so that she wouldn't feel so much pain. She was a bitter girl. There were so many people in the world with bitter lives. Every second, there were people dying. There were families breaking up. There were people dying before their children. Lu Li's own parents were still in the ice abyss, and his sister was at the Siam Plains. He was suffering as well. He couldn't care less, and he didn't have the time to help Jiang Qiling walk out. This girl was too dangerous. Lu Li didn't want to have too many entanglements with her. He shook his head, put on the mask, and walked out. When he opened the cabin door, he still felt sorry for her. He looked back at Jiang Qiling and said, "I don't know how to make you let it go. I just want to say, if you don't save yourself, nobody in the world can save you. Butterflies can only grow beautiful wings and dance after they break out of their cocoons. Phoenixes can only be reborn after they are bathed in fire. Perhaps this is a test given to you by the heavens. You can either completely sink into oblivion or rise from the ashes." Lu Li walked out, jumped down 1 level, and disappeared. His words were still echoing in Jiang Qiling's mind. She stopped crying. She sat there for a long time before she fell to the floor and fell into a deep sleep. After falling asleep, the corners of her mouth suddenly curled up. She actually smiled, and it was abnormally sweet. After Jiang Qiling fell asleep, an old man with purple hair suddenly appeared outside the door, as if he had teleported. Chapter 3:12. Should I leave? Luli was thinking about this when he went back to his cabin. His identity had been exposed. What if some powerful warriors were after him? What if some powerful warriors wanted to interrogate him about how he got out of the wicked sorcery mountain? Anything was possible. Sometimes the iron-armored ship would stop outside a prefectural city or a regent city. Luli could take Mingyu and Yu Huashan down and teleport away as soon as they enter the city. The coffin of the Dragon King could not be opened yet, but Luli had some elixirs which he could get some Xian crystals to teleport away. Yu Huashan should have some Xian crystals as well. It would be hard to find them after dozens of teleportation. After all, the teleportation formation in every city could teleport to many places. That being said, the Pavilion of Delicacy already knew what happened at the Dan City and that he got out of the wicked sorcery mountain. If they wanted to do something, they would have done it already. Luli was hesitating. After all, it was quite comfortable on the iron-armored ship. Luli asked Yu Huashan after some thoughts, "Where are we now?" Yu Huashan took out the map, looked at it, pointed to a city, and said, "We should be at the east of the Phoenix City. We just passed by the Phoenix City a couple of days ago. We will reach a famous mountain at the north of the Central Plains, the Gargoyle Mountain." Luli looked around and realized the Central Plains was so vast. They had been flying for almost a month, and they were still at the north of the Central Plains. Luli was relieved that it would take him almost a year to get to the Heaven's Roar City. He decided to ask for Yu Huashan and Mingyu's opinion. He told them about how Jiang Qiling tried to find out his identity and then asked if they should stay or leave. Mingyu thought about it and said, "Young master, you make the decision. I will go with you." Yu Huashan said nothing for a long time. He used to be an overlord, and he liked to look at the big picture. He had his own views and means. After a while, he said, "Young master, I think we shouldn't wander around." Luli looked at him, but didn't say anything, waiting for his explanation. Yu Huashan said, "First of all, the Pavilion of Delicacy is one of the 12 top forces. The master of the Pavilion of Delicacy once went to the wicked sorcery mountain, so I don't think the Pavilion of Delicacy is interested. Based on my observation, that Jiang Qiling has feelings for you. I think she wants to pursue you, so she won't do you any harm for the time being. Secondly, if your identity is exposed, getting off the ship now is actually the most dangerous thing to do. The city isn't completely safe. For example, if a clan in a region city below learns of your identity, you'll be walking into a tiger's den if you enter this region city. And most importantly, does young master think that after multiple teleportations, it will be difficult for the enemy to track us? In fact, the teleportation formation has a memory of where we went. If a big family wants to track us down, they can easily lock onto us. Yu Huashan was more knowledgeable than Luli. He dared not to harm Luli. After all, you would be killed as well. Lu, we thought about it, and said, "You was master of Lu." His matter was only known by the families in the northern part of the Central Prefecture. It was not enough to spread to the entire Central Prefecture. The palace was Lu Li Tian Hadav of Lu. He was a palace. Heaven. To go. Lu be. The. Luli remembered how serious she was when she apologized to him. He rested for a while and then went back to the cultivation room. Luli relayed Jiang Qiling's words. The steward was not convinced. Luli walked in and said coldly, "If I am lying, ask Jiang Qiling to find me." Luli relayed Jiang Qiling's words to her. She was not convinced. Luli walked in and said coldly, "If I am lying, tell Jiang Qiling to find me later." Luli told Jiang Qiling. The steward was not convinced. Luli walked in and said coldly, "If I am lying, ask Jiang Qiling to find me." Luli went back to closed-door cultivation. He studied the demon's memory and did many experiments, trying to release the skill. For the next few days, Jiang Qiling didn't bother Luli. She stayed on the second floor. The steward went to tell Jiang Qiling that Luli had gone to the cultivation room. Jiang Qiling didn't say anything. She just nodded to show that she understood. Lu Li's words didn't make Jiang Qiling feel better. Instead, she became depressed. She stayed in the cabin, daydreaming. Sometimes she would cry, sometimes she would laugh. Sometimes she would get drunk. Yu Huaxin and Ming Yu didn't leave the cabin. They cultivated every day. Ming Yu had just reached the noble lord realm. He needed to spend a lot of time in closed-door cultivation to stabilize his realm and improve his abilities. Yu Huaxin had soul worms in his soul, but it didn't affect his cultivation. He was bored on the iron-armored ship, so he had to cultivate as well. There were more than 1,000 passengers on the iron-armored ship. Almost all of them would cultivate on the ship and rarely move around. It would be boring if they didn't cultivate during such a long time. The iron-armored ships of the Chamber of Commerce of Delicacy all had a mark on them. At the northern Central Plains, the Chamber of Commerce of Delicacy was the supreme ruler. Who dared to offend the Chamber of Commerce of Delicacy? Therefore, the journey had been peaceful. Nothing unexpected happened. After flying for 9 days, a commander walked out of the cabin on the first floor and directly flew up to the second floor, and then to the third floor. The third floor of the iron-armored ship was even smaller. There was only one cabin with one person living there, Jiang Qiling's grandpa, the most powerful leader on the ship. The leader walked into the cabin, got down on one knee to a purple-haired old man, and said, "Leader, the Gargoyle Mountain is up ahead. I heard that the mountain is not peaceful recently. How about we take a detour?" The purple-haired old man frowned and asked in a cold voice, "What happened to the Gargoyle Mountain? Do you have any accurate information? It will take us 2 to 3 months to take a detour." The leader shook his head and said, "I don't know the details. Our scouts have gone to check, but there is no news yet. They just said that the mountain is not peaceful." "Then let's go to the foot of the Gargoyle Mountain and wait for 2 days. The purple-haired old man waved his hand and said, "If it is not peaceful, we will take a detour. If it is just a small disturbance, we will fly over. Nothing serious will happen." The iron-armored ship flew on. 1 day passed, and the ship arrived at a huge mountain. Wow, the iron-armored ship stopped, which attracted many people to come out and have a look. They looked to the east and saw the mountains in the distance. Purple chi was rising to the sky. Everyone was in an uproar. Yu Huaxin and Ming Yu were alarmed. They came out. Ming Yu took a look and asked, "What is that?" "That should be a famous mountain in the north of the Central Plains." Yu Huaxin thought about it and said, "It is said that the Gargoyle Mountain is a famous treasure land in the north of the Central Plains. Look over there, the purple chi and the glow are all over the sky. There must be some treasures coming out." Oh, Ming Yu was not interested in treasures. This was the north of the Central Plains, the territory of the Pavilion of Delicacy. Even if there were treasures, they would belong to the Pavilion of Delicacy. What did it have to do with him? He turned around and walked back to the cabin to continue his cultivation. Yu Huaxin watched for a while and then stopped. On the third floor of the ship, the leader came back with the latest news from the Pavilion of Delicacy. Only a small part of the Gargoyle Mountain was disturbed, and it had been going on for 7 or 8 days. There was no big disturbance. The scouts from the Pavilion of Delicacy said that there should be no big problem. The purple-haired old man thought about it and waved his hand. "If so, let's not wait any longer. Let's speed up and go over." Swish! Chapter 313. Luli was still cultivating. He had no idea what was going on outside. He was stuck at another key point. He could not go any further. He had understood the process of releasing the mirror image profound meaning. He had gone through every step and every detail many times. The problem was he just could not release that skill. He had mastered all the sword moves of that powerful warrior. All he wanted was to imitate the form, not the spirit. However, he could not even imitate the form. This troubled him. He felt he was stuck in a dead end, and he could not get out no matter how hard he tried. It was just like the hall at the Wicked Sorcery Mountain. He knew there were many treasures in there, but there was no door. Luli decided to take a break after some thoughts. He didn't leave the cultivation room. He took out the coffin of the Dragon King. He wanted to study it and see if he could open it and take out the treasures. The cultivation room was large enough to put the coffin of the Dragon King in. The cabin was too small for it. Buzzing, the coffin of the Dragon King appeared. Even though Luli didn't pour Xian energy into it, the coffin gave off a faint golden glare. The patterns on the coffin were elegant, simple, and elegant. Luli walked around the coffin for a bit and looked at the relic weapon on the coffin. He jumped onto the coffin and grabbed the relic weapon. He mobilized Xian energy slowly, trying to pull the relic weapon out. However, the relic weapon didn't move. Luli could not move it. It was as if the relic weapon was a part of the coffin. Luli thought about it and used Xian energy to control the runes to move around. He wanted to see if he could trigger the inhibition formation on the coffin of the Dragon King and open it. He tried for more than 2 hours, but nothing happened to the coffin. Luli sat with his legs crossed again. He focused on the silver dragon mark in his soul pond, hoping that the silver dragon mark could send him some more memory of the demon. The silver dragon mark didn't move or send any message. Luli had to use more Xian energy to control the runes and patterns. One day passed. Finally, Luli gave up. He could not open the coffin of the Dragon King yet. He had to find another chance in the future. Luli went back to studying the relic skill. Time was of the essence in cultivation. Luli was crazy when he was cultivating. He had no idea what was going on outside. Another 5 days passed. Boom! While he was sitting with his legs crossed, Luli suddenly felt he was suspended in the air. He opened his eyes and noticed that the iron-armored ship was trembling. Clearly, it was descending. What's the situation? The first thought that came to Luli's mind was that the iron-armored ship was under attack. The ship was smashed and started to fall. His body shot up, straight for the cabin door. As soon as he moved, he felt that something was wrong. His speed was more than 10 times slower, and he felt an extremely powerful, invisible force enveloping him. He opened the cabin door and rushed out. He found that the outside was also in chaos. Countless people rushed out, their faces full of fear. Young Master, Yu Huaxin and Mingyu rushed over and grabbed Luli. Little White was brought out as well. The three of them stood together and looked around. Whoosh, 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 countless people rushed out of the cabins. The deck and the walkways were filled with people. The Linglong merchant house's guards also rushed out, and their faces were filled with shock. The iron-armored ship was falling fast. The mountains down below could be seen faintly. Luli was shocked after he took a look. The purple fog was rolling, and there was a faint glow in the fog. The mountains and the fog were faintly visible, giving people a strange feeling as if there were huge wild beasts hiding in there. Don't panic. It is just a sudden increase in gravity. A hoarse voice came out. A purple-haired old man appeared on the second deck, followed by Jiang Qiling and 2 other powerful old men. The purple-haired old man frowned. He glanced over and said, "It must be the sudden change in gravity caused by the riot at the Gargoyle Mountain. I am Jiang Hao. Please trust me. I can get you out of here safely." Jiang Hao. The name put people's minds at ease. The Pavilion of Delicacy was formed by many families. The most powerful family was the Jiang family, one of the 12 royal families. Since there were powerful warriors of the royal family here, nothing should go wrong. "Yu Huaxin, can you fly?" Lu Li's eyes flickered as he shouted. Yu Huaxin released his bead of life and enlarged it at the same time. He wanted to fly up. However, when the bead of life was enlarged, he found that it was falling down as well. The gravity is crazy. Yu Huaxin's eyes grew colder as he said, "The gravity changes according to the realm. The more powerful one is, the greater the gravity. Now, my speed is slowed down by more than 100 times. Mingyu nodded. He had felt it when he was rushing over. Lu Li's eyes grew colder. He thought quickly, wondering if someone was trying to kill him or someone from the Pavilion of Delicacy. Or was it just bad luck? Whoosh, the iron-armored ship was out of control. It was falling down quickly into the purple fog. The view around was blurred. The speed of the iron-armored ship was getting faster and faster. It was out of control. Jiang Hao, the purple-haired old man, shouted, "Watch out. Pick up the elderly and children and be ready to jump off at any time." Yu Huaxin grabbed Lu Li. Many powerful warriors among the guests did the same. Jiang Hao grabbed Jiang Qiling with one hand. Jump! When the iron-armored ship was about to land, Jiang Hao shouted. The shield of the iron-armored ship was opened. Many people jumped off the ship. Ming Yu and Yu Huaxin also jumped down with Lu Li. Boom! The castle-like iron-armored ship smashed into the mountain below. The iron-armored ship was torn into pieces. Broken pieces of wood flew all over the sky. An earth-shaking explosion came up, echoing in the mountain. Ouch! From many places came some grunts. Some young ladies and old men were not strong enough. They had broken bones and were groaning in pain. Where is this? Lu Li was not hurt because he was carried by Ming Yu and Yu Huaxin. He could even jump by himself. He looked around and was relieved to find no shin beasts or danger. This was a barren mountain without many plants. Everything was made up of purple stones. It was as barren as the Gobi Desert. The only thing special about this place was the purple fog. The visibility was less than 1,000 feet. The Gargoyle Mountain, Yu Huaxin explained, but didn't say anything else. The Gargoyle Mountain was famous, but Yu Huaxin didn't know the details. Can we fly? Lu Li looked at Yu Huaxin. The latter released his bead of life and tried. He shook his head and said, the gravity is too strong. I can only fly for a couple of feet and not far. There was a lot of noise. There were more than 1,000 passengers on the iron-armored ship. Of course, they were not happy about the sudden noise. What was more, how could they move on now that the iron-armored ship was destroyed? Don't panic. Jiang Hao's voice was heard. Even though the iron-armored ship is destroyed, the family will know soon. They will send people and iron-armored ships over. This is the Gargoyle Mountain. It is dangerous. Don't wander around. Stay together. My people will set up tents and distribute food. Please wait patiently. The Pavilion of Delicacy will give you an explanation for what happened today. Hearing Jiang Hao's words, the noise became much quieter. Several stewards started to set up tents with teams of escorts to settle down the passengers on the iron-armored ship. Right at that moment, there came a sharp noise from the distance. It was getting closer and louder. Lu Li's expressions changed as soon as he heard it. He hugged his head and squatted on the ground, groaning. Soul attack. Chapter 314. Many people held their heads and rolled on the ground in pain after hearing the sound. Those at lower realms could not stand it. It was as if they were attacked by Lu Li's dragon roar. More than half of the 1,000 guests were at the Soul Pond realm, and the rest were suffering. Many of them had a splitting headache. They even bumped into the rocks nearby, and their heads would bleed. Control them. Jiang Hao was not affected at all. He shouted. Many escorts moved and grabbed 1 or 2 people each. Jiang Hao shouted, don't be afraid. This is a special kind of ghostly wind in the Gargoyle Mountain. It will pass soon. Hang in there. Jiang Qiling was fine. Seeing Lu Li squatting on the ground with his head in his hands, she ran over, squatted down next to Lu Li, and said, Lu Li, hang in there. You will be fine soon. Jiang Qiling was not at a high realm, only at the later stage of the Fate Wheel realm. Many warriors of the Fate Wheel realm here were suffering, so her soul must be strong. Lu Li nodded. Even though he had a splitting headache, he could stand the pain. He clenched his teeth. Yu Huaxin and Ming Yu looked around. They were relieved to make sure that no one was attacking them. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, the shrill sound died down. Everyone felt better. After a while, the sound disappeared completely. Lu Li exhaled, wiped the sweat off his face, looked up at Jiang Qiling and asked, what the hell is this place? Why is the gravity so strong? Why is the sound so horrifying? Jiang Qiling thought about it and said in a low voice, this is the Gargoyle Mountain. It is the second most treasured and dangerous place at the northern Central Plains. Every couple of years or more, many purple Shin crystals and soul crystals will erupt here. With the eruption of crystals, there will be strong wind. Many places will have horrible caves of ghosts that will suck people into the mountain. Once upon a time, a human sovereign realm warrior was sucked in and never came out. What? Lu Li and the other 2 were shocked. If even a human sovereign realm warrior couldn't come out, then everyone here would die in the caves of ghosts. Don't worry. Jiang Qiling comforted them. Caves of ghosts will only appear in places that erupt purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. You'll be fine as long as you don't wander around. Usually, there are no Xian beasts in the Gargoyle Mountain. Sometimes, there will be some gargoyle rats, but the chances are low. There are no ghost caves here. As long as we don't wander around, nothing will happen to us. Lu Li and the other two finally understood after Jiang Qiling explained. More than a dozen days ago, scouts from the Pavilion of Delicacy entered the Gargoyle Mountain and found no signs of a large-scale riot. That was why Jiang Hao ordered the iron-armored ship to fly across the mountain. It would take him 2 to 3 months to make a detour. But he didn't expect that the Heavenly Ghost Mountain, which only had small-scale riots in the past 10 days, would suddenly have a big riot today. When the Gargoyle Mountain was in an uproar, there would be a strong gravitational force inside the mountain, which caused the iron-armored ship to fall. However, he didn't see any purple crystal or soul crystal spurting out nearby, so this place should be safer now. Once the chaos in the Heavenly Ghost Mountain was over, the gravity in the vicinity would weaken, and everyone would be able to leave easily. In this kind of situation, the most correct thing to do was to stay where they were. Otherwise, if they were to enter the eruption zone, there was a high chance that they would be sucked into the ghost cave and encounter the heavenly ghost rats. At that time, even the gods would not be able to save them. What is a purple mysterious crystal? Were they also mystic crystals? What about soul crystals? Lu Li asked with curiosity. Jiang Qiling didn't hide anything. She explained, purple Xian crystal is a special kind of Xian crystal. One of them is worth 10,000 Xian crystals. It is a high-level Xian crystal. We usually call it purple Xian crystal. Here, this is a purple Xian crystal. Jiang Qiling's interspatial ring glowed as she handed over a Xian crystal. This Xian crystal was smaller than average Xian crystals, only the size of a little finger. It was beautiful. Soul crystals are used to cultivate the soul. Jiang Qiling looked around and explained in a low voice. Soul crystals are high-level mystical materials. One soul crystal is worth more than 1,000,000 Xian crystals. Consuming it can enhance the soul. Of course, the more you cultivate, the slower the enhancement will be. Otherwise, the value will be higher. Also, if you see any purple Xian crystals or soul crystals erupting, do not get close to the caves of ghosts. If they fall down, you can collect them. But remember, do not get close to the caves of ghosts. Jiang Qiling didn't walk over to Jiang Hao. When a steward came over, she pointed to a small hill nearby and said, "Build a tent here for me, and 2 tents for this young master." Okay, the steward dared not to disobey her. He asked some escorts to build 3 tents on the top of a nearby hill. 2 were bigger and 1 was smaller. Let's go. We can't leave anytime soon. Jiang Qiling waved to the 2 maids in the distance and then led them into a tent. Jiang Qiling seemed to have recovered a bit. Lu Li thought about it and said, "Let's go. Let's see how it goes first." Lu Li carried Little White into a tent nearby. Mingyu followed him into Lu Li's tent out of worry. The tent was simple. There weren't many furnishings in it. There was only a quilt on the ground and some cattail hassocks. Lu Li asked Yu Huaxin and Mingyu to sit down. They used psychic power to check the surroundings. To their surprise, psychic power was limited here as well. They could only reach a radius of several hundred feet. Hundreds of escorts got busy and started to settle down the guests on the iron-armored ship. Nearly 1,000 tents were set up around the ship. There were even people going around to check. Bang, all of a sudden, the ground trembled. Lu Li and the others rushed out of their tents and looked toward the source of the noise. There came a purple glare. It was like a bunch of purple fireworks shooting up to the sky, but it was covered by the thick fog, so they couldn't see clearly. Are there purple Xian crystals and soul crystals erupting over there? Lu Li murmured to himself. He was getting more and more serious. The visibility here was poor, but there was some purple glare over there. It meant that it was not far away. Whoosh, a shadow flew over and stood outside Jiang Qiling's tent. It was Jiang Hao, the commander-in-chief. Jiang Hao looked into the distance and said in a deep voice, "Qiling, it is not safe here. We need to move." Boom, boom, boom. Before Jiang Qiling could come out, the ground nearby began to tremble. Then a pit appeared near the hill. Purple glare shot out from the pit and shot up to the sky. There happened to be several people near the pit. They were blasted up to the sky by the purple glare. Then they were reduced to a rain of blood and minced meat. Move back. Jiang Hao saw that there were still many people around the pit. Some of them must have been scared out of their wits. Some even tried to grab the purple crystals in the purple glare. Jiang Hao shouted, move back, move back. The cave of ghosts is about to suck in, and there will be gargoyle rats. Everyone here will die." Another noble Lord Realm warrior shouted. Only then did the others come to their senses. They all stepped back. However, many of them were too late. A strong suction force suddenly appeared in the pit, and dozens of people were sucked into the pit. Sand and pebbles were flying around. Many purple Shin crystals and white soul crystals were sucked in as well. Squeak, squeak, Little White suddenly flew out from Lu Li's arms and dashed toward a white soul crystal on the ground. At the same time, the ground began to tremble again. Lu Li was shocked. He shouted, "Little White, it's dangerous. Come back." P.S. That's it for the weekend. Yesterday, a reader drew a portrait of Jiang Qiling. Lu Li thought it was charming. He would post it on the official WeChat account tomorrow afternoon. Those who wanted to see it could go and have a look. Open WeChat, contacts, add friends at the top right corner, search for Devilish Night or Yaya588 and follow. Chapter 315. Tremors on the ground meant that there would be caves of ghosts that would spit out purple gold stones and soul crystals. Those warriors were pierced through. Little White's defense was not strong, which was why Lu Li was so worried. Mingyu grabbed Lu Li to stop him from going over. With a white soul crystal in its mouth, Little White continued to dash forward. With a white glare, Little White sped up. It wasn't affected by the gravity at all. Whoosh, whoosh, a ghost cave appeared, and a sky full of purple light shot out. Little White swallowed the white soul crystal in a few mouthfuls and walked around to eat a few more soul crystals. Then it flew back. Squeak, squeak. Right at that moment, more than a dozen black rats flew out from the cave of ghosts. Each of them was the size of a human head. There was a black glare on their fur, but their eyes were dark blue, for fangs could be seen in their mouths. The fangs were glowing. Clearly, the fangs were poisonous. The most impressive thing was the claws of the rats. They didn't look like the claws of rats. They were more like the claws of eagles. They were shiny, as if they were made of metal. After the more than a dozen rats flew out, they dashed towards all directions like streaks of black lightning. One of them dashed towards Little White, and another two towards Lu Li. Gargoyle rats. Jiang Hao's expressions changed. He shouted at once, "Jiang Ming, Jiang Yan, do it. Don't let the gargoyle rats hurt anyone." Jiang Hao looked at Lu Li and Yu Huaxin and said, "Take care of Qiling for me. I will go and kill the gargoyle rats, or we will be in big trouble." Lu Li nodded. A purple sun appeared on Jiang Hao's neck, and he flew forward. The purple sun whooshed out and turned into a huge one with a radius of more than 10 feet. It smashed toward a gargoyle rat with scorching flames. Whoosh! The other two noble Lord Realm warriors rushed over. One of them released his bead of life, and the other released his bloodline skill. The bloodline skill of this one was of the 6th rank, a blue spike. Yu Huaxin, go and get Little White back, Lu Li shouted to Yu Huaxin. He didn't have time to watch. In order to deal with the gargoyle rats, Jiang Hao had no time to take care of his granddaughter. Lu Li was worried about Little White. Yu Huaxin glanced at Mingyu, then dashed forward. A blue flame mark lit up on his neck. He was ready to unleash his flames to kill the gargoyle rats. Squeak, squeak, Little White was running towards Lu Li. Now that it felt that there was a Xian beast chasing after it, it got angry and stopped. It turned around and glared at the gargoyle mouse, its fur standing on end. An invisible pressure emanated from its body, and the gargoyle mouse behind it suddenly stopped. Little White, come back. Seeing this, Lu Li bellowed again. How could Little White suppress the gargoyle rats? If it attracted the attention of Jiang Hao and the others, it would probably be snatched away. Little White sensed the anger in Lu Li's words. It quickly flew back in a white blur. Yu Huashan released a dragon of fire which enveloped the gargoyle rat in front of him. Squeak, squeak, unexpectedly, the gargoyle rat dashed out from the fire dragon. Its fur glowed in a black light. Yu Huashan's 6th rank bloodline skill failed to hurt it. Boom, 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 Jiang Hao, the 2 noble Lord Realm warriors, and some Eternal Realm warriors all took actions to suppress the gargoyle rat. Luckily, nobody noticed Little White. Lu Li asked Jiang Qiling in surprise, Lady Qi, what rank is this Xian beast? Even a 6th rank bloodline skill cannot hurt it? Jiang Qiling looked at Little White meaningfully, but didn't ask anything. She explained, gargoyle rats used to be of the 5th rank, but they have been eating purple Xian crystals and soul crystals all year round, so they have mutated. They should all be of the 6th rank now. Gargoyle rats have incredible defense. Average warriors of the Eternal Realm can hardly hurt them. Also, their speed is not affected at the Gargoyle Mountain. Also, their venom is very strong. If a person is bitten, he or she will turn into a gargoyle rat in a human shape, and he or she will attack his or her companions like crazy. Bitten by a crazy person, the venom will be contagious. That is why my grandpa takes it so seriously. Freak! Lu Li was shocked, but he didn't mind. Since Little White could suppress the gargoyle rats, at least the gargoyle rats wouldn't dare to attack them. Yu Huashan felt humiliated, so he released his bead of life and used the spark's profound meaning. The gargoyle rat screamed in pain and fled to all directions. Eventually, it escaped into the cave of ghosts. Lu Li looked at Jiang Hao and was taken aback by what he saw. The battle prowess of this senior commander was truly formidable. With a flurry of scorching suns, a celestial ghoul rat was smashed into a bloody mess. Its body was charred black, and it was crushed to death with a single strike. What bloodline skill is that? Lu Li asked with curiosity. Jiang Qiling explained, 7th rank bloodline, solar erosion. Oh, I see. Lu Li suddenly remembered something. He looked at Jiang Qiling's neck and asked, Lady Qi, you must be from a big family, right? How come you didn't awaken your bloodline? There was no bloodline mark on Jiang Qiling's neck. As far as Lu Li knew, only warriors of the Eternal Realm could hide bloodline marks. It was strange that Jiang Qiling was only at the later stage of the Fate Wheel realm. Who said I didn't awaken my bloodline? Jiang Qiling put on a mocking smile and said in a low voice, It is because the bloodline I awaken is too good. Otherwise, my family wouldn't treat me like a treasure and he wouldn't have died. Too good? Lu Li and Ming, you were surprised. Lu Li asked with a frown, Do you have some secret skill that can hide your bloodline mark? I don't think I can do that unless I reach the Eternal Realm. Ha, ha. The Pavilion of Delicacy has many such skills. Jiang Qiling laughed again. Suddenly, a black glare flashed on her neck and a butterfly mark appeared, but it disappeared soon. Clearly, she had used some secret skill to hide it. Even though it was just a flash in the pan, Lu Li and Yu Huashan saw it clearly. They looked at each other, and their pupils contracted. The butterfly mark was beautiful and sexy, but that was not important. What was important was the butterfly was black. The bloodline mark was black. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, gold. The black mark represented the 8th rank bloodline. For more than 10,000 years, there had never been an 8th rank bloodline at the Northern Desert. This slut of a big family had 8th rank bloodline. Lu Li knew about the 12 royal families and some other big families of the Central Plains that had 8th rank bloodline. If he hadn't been disturbed by the animal tooth pendant, he would have awakened 8th rank King Kong bloodline as well. As far as he was concerned, warriors with 8th rank bloodline would be superior young masters and young ladies even in the 12 royal families. They would be surrounded by a group of powerful warriors and would have their eyes on the top of their heads. How could they be as slutty as Jiang Qiling? Lu Li looked at Jiang Qiling. He couldn't help but ask in a low voice, Lady Qi, with all due respect, What is your father's position at the Pavilion of Delicacy? What position? The scorn on Jiang Qiling's face grew stronger. She said emotionlessly, My father is Jiang Wu. Jiang Wu? Lu Li and Ming, you're confused. Was Jiang Wu famous? Lu Li looked at Jiang Qiling with surprise. She rolled her eyes and said, Lu Li, you are not from the Central Plains? You don't know how famous Jiang Wu is? He is the current master of the Pavilion of Delicacy. Chapter 316. She was the daughter of the master of the Pavilion of Delicacy, the most important young lady of the Jiang family, one of the 12 royal families. Lu Li and Ming Yu found it hard to believe. She was the most distinguished young lady of the Central Plains, and now she was standing in front of them. Why did she need Ming Yu's protection? Shouldn't a proud lady like her be protected by a group of powerful escorts at all times? Shouldn't she ride on powerful beasts and fly in the sky so that others could only look up to her? The black bloodline mark on Jiang Qiling's neck proved that she was telling the truth. What was more important was her tone. She didn't feel proud of having a father like this. Instead, she sounded sarcastic as if she was talking about a stranger. It is because the bloodline I awakened is so good. Otherwise, my family wouldn't treat me like a treasure and he wouldn't have to die. Lu Li remembered what Jiang Qiling said, and he had an idea of what was going on. Jiang Qiling was of high status, and she was the treasure of the Jiang family. However, she fell in love with someone she could not fall in love with, or that person didn't deserve to be her husband. Young ladies of big families could not decide their own marriage. A young lady like Jiang Qiling would have to marry a young master of a royal family, or at least a big one. The person she loved must be of humble status. In the end, he would be hounded to death by Jiang Qiling's father, Jiang Wu. Jiang Qiling was devastated. She hated Jiang Wu, but he was her father. She could not avenge her lover, and she could not kill her father. She could only humiliate herself, hurt herself, and torture herself to get back at Jiang Wu. At the same time, she could relieve her guilt towards her lover. A hateful person must have a pitiful side. Lu Li threw Jiang Qiling a casual glance, but said nothing. He didn't comfort her either. He had said what he needed to say that day. It was up to Jiang Qiling to move on. Seeing that Lu Li didn't respond, Jiang Qiling tilted her head and said to him curiously, Lu Li, I am the daughter of the master of the Pavilion of Delicacy. Shouldn't you please me? I'm a powerful person. If you cling to me, you will have a meteoric rise. Ha ha. Lu Li and Ming Yu both laughed. Jiang Qiling was a disciple of a royal family, and so was Lu Li. Lu Li looked at her legs and teased, I don't like living off a woman. Also, your legs are not thick. Jiang Qiling smiled. She looked into the distance and saw that the fight was coming to an end. Her grandpa had come back. She said no more and stood there in silence. Boom, boom, boom. The other two noble Lord Realm Warriors and the Eternal Realm Warriors killed or wounded the gargoyle rats, forcing them to retreat to the Cave of Ghosts. Everyone, leave this area and follow the main group. There's a ghost cave erupting nearby. It's no longer safe. Jiang Hao roared. Many guards started to move and quickly packed up the tents. Most of the passengers followed the group to the west, but some of them sneaked around to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. Jiang Hao did not stop these people. He had already warned them. If these people were still so greedy, they could not blame him if they died. Purple Xian crystals and soul crystals were both good stuff. He was not against collecting some under the premise of safety. Yu Huashan went to collect them. With Ming Yu around, Lu Li would be fine. Yu Huashan had heard about purple Xian crystals and soul crystals, especially soul crystals. He knew they were good stuff. Now that he had such a good chance, he must collect some. The main group started to leave. The warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy had found out that the southwest side was safer. They would go there first. Jiang Qiling was taken away by Jiang Hao. Her surname was Jiang, and so was her grandpa. Lu Li was not surprised. After all, there were so many big families in the world. It was normal for families to be connected by marriage several generations apart. Little White actually wanted to go look for soul crystals. Soul crystals were clearly more delicious than food. Luli was still worried, so he didn't let Little White wander around. Luli looked at Yuhuashan in the distance and made some eye contact. Then Luli left with the main group with Mingyu, leaving Yuhuashan wandering around by himself. Luckily, there were no more caves of ghosts erupting nearby. They marched in silence and arrived at a valley after an hour. Let's have some rest here. Jiang Hao asked the scouts of the Pavilion of Delicacy and decided to camp here. The escorts out of work and set up the tents. Report. A warrior of the Eternal Realm rushed into the valley, bowed in front of Jiang Hao and reported, "There are some gargoyle rats behind us. The dozens that went to look for purple Xian crystals and soul crystals are all bitten to death." The valley was in an uproar. Some of the dozens had relatives in there. They were grief-stricken. Someone wanted to rush out of the valley to check. "Stop!" Jiang Hao shouted coldly. "I have warned them. They are courting death. Don't blame us. Caves of ghosts are erupting, and there are gargoyle rats everywhere. Warriors of the Eternal Realm may die if they encounter them. I will not stop you if you want to rush out now, but I will not be responsible for your deaths." Luli was not worried. He had a spiritual connection with the soul worm in Yuhuashan's head, so he knew that Yuhuashan was alive and well. Yuhuashan was powerful, so he would be fine. Some of the warriors that wanted to rush out stopped. Eventually, they didn't dare to do so. It would be safer to follow Jiang Hao. If they rushed out like this, they would all die if they ran into gargoyle rats. Whoosh! After the time for several incense sticks to burn, Yuhuashan came back. He saw Luli in a corner of the valley and walked over in strides. When he was next to Luli, he said in a low voice, "There are many gargoyle rats out there. I only got more than 20 soul crystals. Young master, you can have them all. You don't want them?" Luli looked at Yuhuashan, who shook his head and said, "These soul crystals are of no use to my soul cultivation. Young master, you are at the soul pond realm now, and you need to strengthen your soul the most. These soul crystals are more useful to you." Luli took the soul crystals and asked, "All the warriors that didn't go with us are dead?" Yuhuashan nodded. Luli sighed and asked again, "How do I use the soul crystals?" Yuhuashan didn't know, and Mingyu knew nothing about it. Luli looked around and saw Jiang Qiling's maids guarding outside a tent not far away. He walked over there, and Mingyu followed him. With warriors of the noble Lord Realm with them, they could run away even if there was a cave of ghosts nearby. Luli didn't object. "Young master." Seeing Luli coming over, the maid bowed to him in a low voice. Jiang Qiling heard the noise and came out. She squinted her foxy eyes and said with a sweet smile, "Young Master Lu, you are a rare guest. Do you want to come in and have a seat?" Luli didn't exchange pleasantries with Jiang Qiling, and he didn't go in either. He took out a soul crystal and asked, "How do I consume this?" "Just refine it with your dark force." Jiang Qiling added after some thoughts, "But this is the same as pellets. It won't be effective if you consume too much of it. If you have other mystical materials of the soul type, it will be more effective." Luli nodded, cupped his fists, and left. He didn't stand on ceremony with Jiang Qiling at all. The latter wasn't annoyed. She tilted her head and looked at Luli's back for a while before she went back in. Luli didn't have any soul-nurturing mystical materials. None of the 36 mystical materials he got from the Tomb of Dragon King was of the soul type. Yuhuashan and Mingyu might have some, but Luli wouldn't ask for them. "Protect me. I will try to consume the soul crystal." Luli couldn't leave this place for a while, and he couldn't learn the skills of the demon. Therefore, he decided to consume the soul crystal to enhance his soul and realm. Chapter 3:17. With Mingyu and Yuhuashan here, they could take Luli away at any time in case of danger. Luli sat in the tent with his legs crossed and cultivated with peace of mind. He took out a soul crystal. It was small, only the size of fingernail. It was white with a soft glow coming out from it. It was translucent, and there were some strange veins in it. Luli looked at it for a bit. He used Xian energy to cover the entire soul crystal and close his eyes to sense it. After the Xian energy enveloped the soul crystal, it gave off a faint white glow. Then it melted bit by bit and turned into a strand of energy that entered Luli's body. Luli felt a coolness when the energy entered his body. It was comfortable. He controlled the energy to flow into his brain. When it reached the edge of the soul pond suddenly glowed and absorbed the white spiritual chi. Good stuff. Luli clearly felt refreshed. His soul was comfortable, and he felt extremely comfortable. He quickly increased his Xian energy to speed up the process. Strand after strand of white energy entered his body and were eventually absorbed by the soul pond. One soul crystal was consumed in the time for 2 incense sticks to burn. The ring on Lu Li's hand glowed as he took out 3 soul crystals. He continued to consume them, and his speed was increasing. However, at that moment, something strange happened. The silver dragon mark suddenly glowed. Luli was intrigued. He focused on the silver dragon mark, thinking it was sending him a message. However, after a while, he found that the silver dragon mark was absorbing the white energy. Luli was speechless. Half of the white energy he got from the soul crystals was absorbed by the silver dragon mark in his soul pond. The soul pond realm was about cultivating soul and Xian energy. Soul was the most important. With a powerful soul, the speed of learning could be faster, which would lay the foundation for learning profound meanings in the future. To reach the peak of the soul pond realm, the soul pond must be 10 times stronger, which would require a lot of mystical materials related to soul. Luli hadn't been cultivating because he didn't have such mystical materials. Now that he finally got some soul crystals, the silver dragon mark wanted to share them. Luli decided to leave it alone. He couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. The silver dragon mark was not under his control. He wouldn't be able to do anything even if it absorbed all the energy, let alone half. He continued to refine them, and the speed of his refinement became faster and faster. In the end, he had already refined 5 soul crystals in one go. His soul pond and the silver dragon mark would absorb as much white essence chi as he could refine. In just over 2 hours, more than 20 soul crystals had all been refined. When Luli stopped, the silver dragon mark dimmed down again, but his soul pond was more condensed. Luli was excited. He opened his eyes, looked at Yu Huashen, and said, "Yu Huashen, go and collect more soul crystals for me. They are good." "No problem." Yu Huashen nodded and said, "But I don't think there are many soul crystals nearby. I may need to go somewhere further. If I encounter gargoyle rats, it will take me longer. Young master, if something happens here, you can just move. I will find you." "Wait." Seeing that Yu Huashen was about to leave, Luli thought about it and said to Little White lying in the corner, "Little White, go with Yu Huashen and help him collect soul crystals. But you have to listen to Yu Huashen. Do not wander around. Do you understand?" Squeak, squeak. Little White was excited and nodded. Yu Huashen, on the other hand, was confused. Luli waved his hand and whispered to Yu Huashen, "Little White is good. With it here, the gargoyle rats won't dare to get close to you. You can collect soul crystals more easily. Collect more purple Xian crystals as well." 1 purple Xian crystal was worth 10,000 Xian crystals. 10,000 would be 100 million Xian crystals. How could Luli let go of such a good thing? He didn't even want to leave the Gargoyle Mountain now. This was a land of treasures. If Yu Huashen could collect 1 million purple Xian crystals, then he would have enough money to pay for the journey to the Mystic Armor region. Really? Yu Huashen stared at Little White in shock. This little beast looked no different from a pet, except for something special. He didn't expect that it could subdue the gargoyle rats. Mingyu knew how amazing Little White was. It was a beast that could bite off fate wheels. Mingyu nodded to Yu Huashen. Yu Huashen left with Little White and rushed out of the valley. Many people of the Pavilion of Delicacy looked at Yu Huashen, but didn't say anything. After all, a warrior of the Noble Lord realm would be fine as long as he was careful. There were many purple Xian crystals and soul crystals out there. If it weren't for Jianghao, they would have gone out to try their luck. Inside the tent, Mingyu thought about it and asked, "Young master, what rank is Little White?" "I don't know." Luli shook his head and said, "I have done some research, but I can't find anything about Little White. You can see that Little White is always small. Have you ever heard of any high-level Xian beast that is so small? Mingyu shook his head. He had never heard of such a thing. Luli thought about it and said, but since Little White can subdue the gargoyle rats, it must be above the 6th rank. Mingyu agreed. Then he exclaimed to himself that if Little White was of the 7th rank, then it would be a beast king. Once it grew up, it would be a Xian beast that could be as powerful as a human sovereign realm warrior. An idea came to Mingyu's mind. He asked, young master, I think you got this beast near the ice abyss. According to my information, there was a beast king that had just given birth. Do you think it is possible that Little White is the son of the beast king? I don't know. Luli shook his head again and said, I have thought about it as well. But I remember that the beast king was huge, as big as a mountain. Even if Little White was just born, it can't be so small. Mingyu couldn't figure it out either. Luli waved his hand and said, don't overthink it. We will know when Little White grows up in a few years. Mingyu nodded in agreement and sat down with his legs crossed. Luli felt bored, so he started to cultivate Xian energy while waiting for Yu Huashan to come back. At dusk, Yu Huashan came back. As soon as he entered the tent, he said with joy, young master, your beast is amazing. The gargoyle rats don't even dare to get close to me. I got hundreds of soul crystals and nearly 1,000 purple Xian crystals. I will send them back for you to cultivate. Okay, Luli was excited. He gave Little White a thumbs up. He took over the soul crystals and threw 2 to Little White. Little White didn't take them. It even burped. Yu Huashan said with a bitter smile, it ate a lot along the way, at least dozens of them. Okay, let Little White eat whatever it wants. Luli spoiled Little White. If he had dozens of rising dragon grasses for Little White to eat, he would give them to Little White without any hesitation, let alone soul crystals. Young master, cultivate. I will go out and collect more. Chapter 3:18. The valley was really safe. They had been here for half a day, and nothing had happened. In the distance, however, there were caves of ghosts erupting everywhere, especially at midnight. They could see a purple glare shooting up to the sky, and the ground was trembling. The eruption of caves of ghosts meant that there were purple Xian crystals and soul crystals, which were treasures in Xian crystals. Of course, it also meant endless danger. When caves of ghosts erupted, the purple Xian crystals and soul crystals could pierce through people, and the suction force after eruption would be horrifying. Take gargoyle rats, for example. As caves of ghosts erupted, there would be more and more gargoyle rats. Only warriors of the noble lord realm could survive. Who would dare to go out and court death? Jiang Hao sent many warriors to surround the area. In the middle of the night, Jiang Hao even sent a powerful warrior of the noble lord realm out to subdue some gargoyle rats that were approaching in secret. The Pavilion of Delicacy should be informed that something was wrong here, and they would send a ship over as soon as possible. That being said, it would take time. Nobody dared to move around. They hid in the valley quietly. Luli spent the whole night consuming soul crystals. He was fast, and he had consumed more than 200 soul crystals in one night. His soul pond was obviously bigger. His soul pond was glowing and more condensed. What frustrated him was that the silver dragon bloodline had absorbed a lot of white energy, but there was no change. No memory fragments of demons were transmitted to him. At dawn, Luli fell into a deep sleep. He had only slept for a couple of hours when he felt the ground was trembling. He opened his eyes abruptly. Luckily, the ground only trembled for a bit. Luli and Mingyu walked out and looked to the north. Through the thick purple haze, they could see purple smoke rising up to the sky. There should be caves of ghosts erupting over there. Many people walked out of their tents in fear. Jiang Hao came out from the tent next to Jiang Qiling at once. Not long after, an imperishable realm martial practitioner flew over and shouted, Chief Commander, 3 ghost caves have erupted 5 miles to the north. Almost 100 heavenly ghoul rats have appeared and are charging this way. Swish, 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 many people's faces changed. There were close to 100 celestial ghoul rats. If they were to charge into the valley, many people would die. Jiang Hao looked over to Lu Li. Lu Li nodded. Lu Li nodded. Jiang Hao waved his hand and said, Jiang Ming, Jiang Yin, come with me to defeat the gargoyle rats. I will leave Jiang Hong to you. Qiling, go to young Master Lu's side. The gargoyle rats must not be allowed to come. Jiang Hao gave some instructions and rushed out with 2 noble Lord Realm warriors and more than a dozen Eternal Realm warriors. The 3 warriors at the peak of the Eternal Realm surrounded Jiang Qiling and walked towards Lu Li. At least, Mingyu would be safer here. Today, Jiang Qiling was wearing a bright yellow dress with purple and gold tassels in her hair. Her lips were still covered with blood-red rouge. She looked gorgeous and enchanting. She walked over to Lu Li and said nothing. She was not worried at all. She stood there in silence. Nobody could tell what she was thinking. Lu Li asked with curiosity, Lady Qi, your grandpa left you to kill the gargoyle rats? Isn't he afraid that something will happen to you? In the eyes of the big shots, they wouldn't care even if this group of people died. Lu Li didn't think Jiang Hao was a saint who cared about the people. Theoretically speaking, he should be with her at all times. Ha ha. Jiang Qiling squinted at Lu Li and said with a sarcastic smile, I have done many bad things over the years. Once, I almost burned a cousin to death. Grandpa must be disappointed in me. It is normal that he doesn't care about me. You are wrong. Lu Li shook his head and said, I can tell that your grandpa cares about you. Yes. Jiang Qiling turned to Lu Li and said, the Jiang family cares about me, and Jiang Wuwa cares about me more. But that is all. Lu Li could feel the hatred in Jiang Qiling's heart when she called her father by his name in a mocking and sarcastic tone. He shook his head and said nothing more. He waited for Jiang Hao to come back in silence. Boom, boom, boom. Soon, there came some noises from the north. Jiang Hao and the others were fighting against the gargoyle rats. The atmosphere was tense as well. Everyone was waiting for the end of the fight. Oh no, there are gargoyle rats coming from the south. From outside the valley came a cry of alarm. Then 2 people let out miserable cries, and more than a dozen gargoyle rats were making strange noises. Everyone in the valley was taken aback. Jiang Hong, who was staying behind, shouted at once, There are gargoyle rats coming. Jiang Lang, go and stop them. Dozens of Eternal Realm warriors rushed out. There came some noises of explosions and angry shouts. Many released their fate wheels. There were colorful rays of light dancing around. Mingyu frowned. He grabbed Lu Li and was ready to leave at any time. Lu Li threw her a look. She was calm, not a trace of panic. She was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Roar, roar, from outside came some strange noises. They sounded like corpse soldiers and netherworld generals, spooky and creepy. Then someone from the Pavilion of Delicacy shouted, Oh no, Zhonglin and the others are poisoned. Kill them. Whoosh, 4 or 5 shadows flew into the valley. When they saw that it was the gargoyle rats, they panicked. Many people ran to the top of the valley. Young lady, let's go. Jiang Hong grabbed Jiang Qiling with one hand. The situation was getting out of control. When the gargoyle rats rushed into the crowd, more people would be poisoned. Those who were poisoned would attack their companions, and the poison would spread. In the end, all those who stayed would die. Roar, roar, as expected, a heavenly ghost rat rushed into the crowd and bit a few people on their thighs. Those people's eyes immediately turned dark blue. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they rushed towards the people around them, grabbing them and biting them. Jiang Qiling pushed Jiang Hong's hand away. She looked at Lu Li and said, Lu Li, ask your people to help me. I will go and deal with the gargoyle rats. Lu Li was just about to leave with Mingyu when he heard Jiang Qiling's words. Jiang Hong was anxious. He grabbed Jiang Qiling again and said, Lady Qi, don't be impulsive. If anything happens to you, we will all die. Piss off. Get your filthy hands off me. Jiang Qiling shouted. She was filled with killing intent. She looked fierce. She had turned into a female Rakshasa, quite intimidating. She looked at Lu Li and said, What? I thought you said you're not afraid of death. Or you don't believe me. The black bloodline mark on Jiang Qiling's neck emerged, and a beautiful butterfly glowed. Lu Li made up his mind in a split second. He shouted coldly, Mingyu, help her. Mingyu looked at Lu Li's determined eyes. He didn't say much. He grabbed Jiang Qiling's arm and rushed forward. A black glare glowed on her neck. Following that, many black butterflies flew out toward the gargoyle rats. Some of the butterflies were aimed at the poison warriors. In an instant, the sky was filled with black butterflies. As soon as the butterflies came out, the world seemed to have disappeared. Many people were attracted by the butterflies. The butterflies were small. They flapped their wings and danced in the air. It was beautiful. Every butterfly had a black glare, beautiful and enchanting. One by one, the butterflies flew towards the heavenly ghost rats. A few people who were poisoned by the rats were struck by the butterflies. The black butterflies flashed and disappeared into the bodies of the cultivators. Something miraculous happened. When the first black butterfly entered the body of a gargoyle rat, the rat slowed down and the dark blue glare in its eyes dimmed. When the second black butterfly entered the body of the gargoyle rat, it slowed down even more. The third, the fourth, when 7 or 8 black butterflies entered the bodies of the gargoyle rats. All the other gargoyle rats stopped moving. They stood still on the spot. The poison warriors were the same. After 7 or 8 black butterflies entered their bodies, they were all frozen on the spot. Squeak, squeak. What shocked Lu Li and the others was that the 4 or 5 gargoyle rats began to kill each other and attack each other. Buzzing, the ring on Jiang Qiling's hand glowed as several black daggers came out. She waved her hand, and the daggers flew out. They all went between the eyebrows of the poison warriors and came out from the back of their heads. They circled around and returned to Jiang Qiling's hand. Boom! The poison warriors fell to the ground and died. Jiang Qiling didn't look at the gargoyle rats that were killing each other. She said to Mingyu, "Take me out. There are more gargoyle rats out there." Mingyu put his mind at ease. He rushed out with Jiang Qiling. The commotion in the valley quieted down. Lu Li exclaimed to himself. He asked Jiang Hong next to him, "What is the name of this bloodline skill?" Jiang Hong didn't hide it. This bloodline skill was famous, and people could ask about it easily. He said, 8th rank bloodline, Soul Feast Butterfly. Lady Qi is the most talented genius of the Jiang family. What happened a few years ago was too much for her. Otherwise, she could have defeated all the warriors of the Eternal Realm by now. P.S. Jiang Qiling's portrait has been posted on WeChat. If you haven't followed her yet, you can do so now. You can check her history. You could just search for Devilish Knight or Yaoya588 on WeChat. Chapter 319. At this moment, Lu Li suddenly understood why Jiang Hao left Jiang Qiling to deal with the gargoyle rats. Jiang Qiling had such a horrifying bloodline skill that the gargoyle rats could not hurt her. 8th rank bloodline. Lu Li gritted his teeth. If it were not for the animal tooth pendant, he would have the King Kong bloodline as well. Once he used the mystic armor skill, not even the gargoyle rats would be able to hurt him. It was pointless to think about this now. The Silver Dragon bloodline was not bad, and he had 2 bloodline skills. Mingyu carried Jiang Qiling and rushed out of the valley. Jiang Qiling might not be able to move when she used her bloodline skill. With a warrior of the Noble Lord realm carrying her, she would be more agile and safer. Outside the valley, they ran into 7 or 8 gargoyle rats. 5 or 6 warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy were poisoned. The poison had taken effect, and they were attacking their own people. Jiang Qiling didn't show any mercy. She controlled all the gargoyle rats with Soul Feast butterflies and let them kill each other. As for the warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy that were poisoned, she shot them to death with her flying knives. Jiang Qiling was ruthless in killing. She didn't even change her expression. It was as easy as killing cats and dogs. Mingyu exclaimed to himself, "This woman was freakish. She could kill her own people without batting an eyelid." In the time for 1 incense stick to burn, Jiang Qiling had the situation under control. 8th rank bloodline was amazing. Jiang Qiling was cruel. The gargoyle rats all killed each other. Send someone to burn all the gargoyle rats. Burn the bodies as well. Don't let the poison spread. Jiang Qiling said indifferently and then walked into the valley alone. Mingyu followed her in silence. Maybe it was because she had used too many bloodline skills or she had killed her own people, but she was not in a good mood. There was not a trace of blood on her face. She went back to her tent with her two maids. She killed all the poison ones, Mingyu whispered to Luli. Luli curled his lips. He had a whole new level of respect for Jiang Qiling. If it were Jiang Qiling, he would have killed her. After all, the poison ones were beyond saving. Keeping them alive would only bring harm to his own people. However, Jiang Qiling remained calm, which made many girls feel inferior. A young lady from a super family was indeed different. The people of the Linglong Pavilion started to clean up the mess. The valley was still safe for now. Since Jiang Hao and the others had not returned, they naturally did not dare to wander around. The dead bodies of the gargoyle rats were taken away, and those killed by Jiang Qiling were burned as well. Gradually, the valley quieted down. After the time it took for 3 incense sticks to burn, Jiang Hao and the others returned. Jiang Hao was not nervous at all when he learned that there was a fight. Instead, he felt gratified. The fact that Jiang Qiling could save people meant that she still had kindness in her heart. Although she had done a lot of crazy things over the years and had done a lot of things that made them sad, at least she had not completely fallen. There was still room for redemption. Jiang Hao gave a few instructions and asked his men to clean up the mess and strengthen the security. He went into Jiang Qiling's tent and took a look. Then he came out and walked toward Lu Li's tent. Mingyu was guarding outside. Jiang Hao smiled and said, "I want to talk to young Master Lu." Lu Li heard the noise and walked out to welcome Jiang Hao in. There were only some cushions in the tent. Lu Li shrugged his shoulders and said, "Chief, the conditions are not good. I am sorry." Jiang Hao smiled and knelt on the cushion. Lu Li knelt across from him and asked with a smile, "Chief, what can I do for you?" Jiang Hao put on a gentle smile and said, "I am here to thank you, young Master Lu." Lu Li was surprised. He waved his hand and said, "You are too kind. I didn't do anything. It was Lady Jiang who helped me with the gargoyle rats." "I'm not talking about that." Jiang Hao sighed and said, "I am thanking you for enlightening Qiling. She has changed. Even though she cannot get over it completely, she is much better. I am already surprised that she took the initiative to help me with the gargoyle rats." Lu Li nodded after a moment of silence. "I can tell that Lady Qi used to be a nice girl. If she can get over it, it will be a good thing. But it is up to her whether she can get over it or not. There is nothing we can do." Jiang Hao nodded in agreement. Then he glanced at Lu Li and asked, "Young Master Lu, do you know who Qiling is? Do you know anything about her past?" Lu Li didn't try to hide anything. He said, "She told me and I can guess." "Chief, don't worry. I am not interested in your granddaughter. I am not playing tricks." "Oh." Jiang Hao was surprised. She was the daughter of the master of the Pavilion of Delicacy, a genius and a beauty. How come Lu Li was not interested in her? And he even said it out loud. Jiang Hao thought about the 2 noble Lord Realm warriors with Lu Li. He squinted and asked, "Forgive me for asking, but who is young Master Lu's father?" The Pavilion of Delicacy had looked into Lu Li and knew that he was involved in the wicked sorcery mountain at the Dan City. But they didn't know his real identity. Of course, Lu Li wouldn't tell them. He said seriously, "I am sorry. I don't want to tell you, and please don't look into it. I promise you that I will not have any bad feelings towards Lady Qi, and I will not hurt her. Perhaps it won't be long before we leave." Lu Li's words were honest. Even though he was wearing a mask, his eyes were gentle, indicating that he was at peace. Jiang Hao stroked his beard and said after some thoughts, "Young Master Lu, you are a smart man. After all, Qiling's identity is special. I don't object to it, but her father and some patriarchs of the family value this. So, I hope you can understand." "I understand." Lu Li nodded. Jiang Hao stood up and left. Lu Li didn't see him off. He didn't even have the chance to cozy up to Jiang Qiling, not to mention Jiang Hao. He really didn't have any bad feelings towards Jiang Qiling. He even hated her before. After learning her story, Lu Li just thought she was a poor woman. He didn't have any other thoughts. His mind was still. Soon, he went back to closed-door cultivation to consume more soul crystals. Cultivation at the Soul Pond realm was not easy. He had consumed hundreds of soul crystals, but his soul pond didn't change much. He could imagine how many mystical materials he would need to reach the peak of the soul pond realm. There were two ways to cultivate a soul pond. The first one was to cultivate using cultivation methods, which was slow. It would take more than 10 years or even decades, depending on the strength of the cultivation method. The second one was to use soul-related mystical materials. Why did disciples of big families cultivate so fast? Because they had no lack of mystical materials. As long as they were talented and hardworking enough, their families would give them endless mystical materials to help them make breakthroughs. Luli didn't have any mystical materials before. Now that he had such a good chance to get many soul crystals, he wouldn't let it go to waste. One soul crystal was worth 1,000,000 Xian crystals. Luli had consumed hundreds. In other words, he had spent hundreds of millions of Xian crystals. As a matter of fact, average families wouldn't consume soul crystals like this. Usually, they would use secret methods and other mystical materials together. In this way, the cultivation speed would be several times faster and the consumption of soul crystals wouldn't be as high. Luli was abusing nature. Luli didn't have other mystical materials, and he didn't know secret methods. He didn't care about these things. When he went to the Lu family, he would have no lack of mystical materials. So, he didn't mind squandering now. Lu family. Chapter 320. Yu Huaxin and Little White were gone for a long time this time. They didn't come back until the next night. Luli could sense Yu Huaxin through the soul worms, so he knew he was fine. If so, Little White must be fine as well. Luli was relieved. Yu Huaxin's face was glowing after he came back. Clearly, he had gained a lot. Lu Li and Mingyu looked at him. Yu Huaxin grinned and said, "The caves of ghosts are erupting more and more violently. There are purple Xian crystals and soul crystals everywhere. There are more gargoyle rats as well. But Little White is awesome. With it here, no gargoyle rats dare to get close." Ha. Luli was excited. He asked, "How many did you get?" He had used up more than half of his soul crystals. Now that Yu Huaxin was back, Luli could continue cultivating. Yu Huaxin reached out 2 fingers and said, "Nearly 2,000 soul crystals and 90,000 purple Xian crystals." Good. Luli gave him a thumbs up. 2,000 soul crystals meant more than 2 billion Xian crystals. The 70,000 purple Xian crystals meant more than 900 million Xian crystals. They had only been out for 1 day and night, and they had gained a lot. Every time the caves of ghosts erupted, there would be a large number of purple Xian crystals and soul crystals, but most of them would be absorbed back into the caves. Yu Huaxin was already doing well. Of course, Little White also played a part. With the eruption of the caves of ghosts, there would be more and more gargoyle rats. Without Little White, Yu Huaxin would be attacked by the gargoyle rats and wouldn't have the time to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. Yu Huaxin's ring lit up, and he let out 2,000 soul crystals. Luli took them all. Yu Huaxin didn't give the purple Xian crystals to Luli. It was the same no matter who had them. "Young master." Yu Huaxin didn't go out right away. Instead, he asked with a frown, "I think there will be more gargoyle rats coming. How about I go out by myself and leave Little White here? You will be safer this way." Gargoyle rats were horrifying. Once Luli was bitten, he would be poisoned and turned into a human rat. Not even a god could save him. Luli refused after some thoughts. Without Little White, Yu Huaxin couldn't collect too many purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. His safety was not a problem. With Mingyu around, he could run away at any time. Yu Huaxin's bloodline skill. Even if there were hundreds of gargoyle rats, Jiang Hao and Jiang Qiling would be fine. Luli gave Yu Huaxin a jade talisman of warning after some thoughts and said, "Take this jade talisman. If I am in danger, I will crush the jade talisman and you can come back with Little White immediately. If we run away, we will leave a mark." Sure. With Little White around, he could ignore the gargoyle rats. Even if something happened, it wouldn't take him long to rush back. Yu Huaxin went out again without taking a rest. He wanted to collect as many soul crystals and purple shin crystals as possible so that he could reach the mystic armor region as soon as possible. If Luli was in a good mood, he might set him free. After all, the Lu family did not lack powerful warriors. People from the Pavilion of Delicacy were envious of Yu Huashen as he walked in and out. Normally, ordinary people were not allowed to enter the Heavenly Ghost Mountain. Even when there was a riot, ordinary martial artists did not dare to enter. After the riot, the Pavilion of Delicacy and other forces nearby would send people to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. But now Yu Huashen had it easy. Luli left Yu Huashen alone and continued to consume soul crystals. At this point, he could clearly feel that the effect was getting worse. Every time he consumed soul crystals, there would be less white energy. It must be that the soul crystals were becoming resistant to his body. Luli didn't stop. The silver dragon mark had been absorbing the white energy. Luli wanted to see if there would be any changes after the silver dragon absorbed enough white energy. Therefore, even though it was wasteful to consume soul crystals now, Luli didn't stop. He went on. At midnight, Jiang Hao and the others went out again. There were dozens of gargoyle rats outside. Jiang Hao also sent someone to warn everyone to be careful. Luli had to stop cultivating. Luckily, there was only one batch of gargoyle rats this time. Jiang Hao and the others successfully dealt with the gargoyle rats. Luli went back to cultivating after he was sure that it was safe. He fell into a deep sleep after the second half of the night. Not long after the sun rose, more gargoyle rats came. This time, there were more than 100 of them. Jiang Hao wanted Jiang Qiling to help, but she didn't pay attention to him. Jiang Hao had to go out with the others and asked Lu Li and Jiang Hong to keep an eye on Jiang Qiling. More than 100 gargoyle rats could not stop all of them. Noises of fighting came from outside the valley. Lu Li noticed that Jiang Qiling was still in her tent. He walked over with Ming Yu with a frown. Lifting up the curtain, Lu Li saw Jiang Qiling sitting there quietly, sipping a goblet of bloody rose. A glint of coldness rose in Lu Li's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Jiang Qiling, saving a life is more meritorious than building a 7-story pagoda. There are warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy out there. Are you going to watch them die?" Jiang Qiling looked up. She was drunk. She put on a silly smile, tilted her head, and said, "They watched my lover die. Why can't I watch them die? There is no good person in the Pavilion of Delicacy. What does their death have to do with me? I am doing them a favor by saving them, and it is my duty not to save them. People are selfish. If they can be so selfish, why can't I be?" Jiang Qiling's twisted logic enraged Lu Li. His eyes grew colder as he shouted, "Last night, I told your grandpa that you were a good person. I take back my words. Jiang Qiling, if you don't want to walk out, then you can sink into it. I was wrong about you." With that said, Lu Li turned around and left. Jiang Qiling was angry out of instinct after being yelled at by Lu Li. But then she panicked. She moved her lips, trying to stop Lu Li, but she didn't say anything. Bang! She smashed the goblet on the ground and stood up. She glared at Lu Li's back, stomped her feet, and said, "Jiang Hong, get over here. Protect me." Jiang Hong hurried over with a group of warriors. Jiang Qiling rushed out angrily. As soon as she arrived at the valley, she began to suppress the gargoyle rats one by one. Boom, boom, boom. Right at that moment, the ground in the middle of the valley began to tremble. Many people in the valley were frightened, and they rushed to the corners of the valley. Oh no! Ming Yu and Lu Li looked at each other and shouted at the same time. They were unlucky this time. The eruption of the valley was the worst-case scenario. Seeing that many people were retreating to the corners of the valley, Lu Li shouted, "All of you, get out of the valley, or you will all die." The valley was not a large one. If some gargoyle rats were to erupt, those that didn't leave the valley would all die. Lu Li didn't mind them after he shouted. He shouted to Ming Yu, "Let's go and go to Jiang Qiling." Jiang Hao had told him to take care of Jiang Qiling. It was okay for Ming Yu to take care of one more person. Lu Li had to fulfill his promise. Whoosh, whoosh. Chapter 321. Ming Yu could not suppress so many gargoyle rats, and Jiang Qiling could not kill so many either. What was more, many people would be poisoned and turn into human rats. The situation was not completely messed up yet. Once it did, they might not even be able to leave. If they were poisoned, everyone would be doomed. Run. Luli didn't hesitate. Many people here would die, but there was nothing he could do. If he stayed, he would die as well. If he had the ability, he might lend a hand. Jiang Qiling's words made sense. Saving people was an act of kindness, and not doing so was her duty. What was more, Lu Li and Ming Yu didn't have the ability yet. Ming Yu sped up to the limit. The gravity here was strong. Even so, he was only as fast as a warrior of the Fate Wheel realm outside. Squeak, squeak, the gargoyle rats dashed towards the crowd from all directions. Soon, there came many miserable cries. The weaker ones were approached by the gargoyle rats, and soon, they were poisoned and turned into human rats. They made threatening gestures and dashed towards the crowd with a dark blue glow in their eyes. Whoosh, 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 many people didn't have the time to reach the entrance of the valley. They had to climb up the mountains. Luckily, the mountains were not so steep. Gravity was strong, but people could climb up easily. After the cave of ghosts erupted, there was a strong suction force. Someone was climbing halfway up the mountain, but he couldn't stand the suction force. He tumbled down and fell into the cave of ghosts with miserable cries. Ming Yu was the fastest one here. He had already made it out of the valley. Lu Li saw Jiang Qiling and the others who were fighting outside the valley. He shouted at once, "Jiang Qiling, come with me." Ming Yu ran over. Jiang Hong nodded and said, "Lady Qi, go with young Master Lu. We will cover you." "I am not leaving." Jiang Qiling pouted and pulled a long face. She seemed to be still angry. Lu Li just shouted at her, which made her angry. She stared at Lu Li coldly and said, "Didn't you misjudge me? Why do you still care about me? What's more, I am powerful. Do I need you, a warrior of the Soul Pond realm, to care about me?" Miserable cries went on in the valley. Nobody knew how many people had died. Gargoyle rats were making strange noises. No one knew when they would come out. Under the silver golem mask, Lu Li's eyes grew colder. He had no time to waste with Jiang Qiling. He shouted, "I will ask you one last time. Are you going or not? If you don't leave, I won't care about you anymore." Jiang Qiling snorted. She turned around and said coldly, "Go away. I will not go with you." "Go." Lu Li was not that despicable. He shouted, and Ming Yu took him to the distance at once without any hesitation. Jiang Qiling looked to where Lu Li left, stomped her feet, and said, "Lu Li, you bastard. Miss, let's run." Jiang Hong grabbed Jiang Qiling with one hand and rushed to another direction with the others. Since Jiang Qiling didn't want to go with Lu Li, they had to bring her to Jiang Hao. "Run, run!" A group of people rushed out of the valley and followed suit. However, before the gargoyle rats outside could be suppressed, more gargoyle rats rushed out from the inside. After a few of them were bitten by the heavenly ogre rats, the group fell into chaos and could only scatter and flee for their lives. The valley had already turned into hell, and those who had not escaped had all turned into rat men. Those rat men were brandishing their claws and fangs, trying to find someone to attack. There were more than 1,000 escorts and passengers, but only 700 or 800 at most could escape. Also, there were gargoyle rats everywhere. Nobody could tell how many of the 700 or 800 could survive. Bang! Lu Li crushed the jade talisman in his hand. He and Ming Yu had left the group, and they could run into gargoyle rats at any time. Ming Yu could deal with a few, but what if there were dozens or hundreds of them? There were more than 100 gargoyle rats in the valley. This place was no longer safe. Ming Yu dared not to stay any longer. He ran on. Squeak, squeak, from the left came some strange noises. Then 3 black shadows rushed out from the purple haze. Ming Yu released his bead of life at once and shouted, "Force suppress." The wind and clouds moved. A surge of energy came down. The gargoyle rats couldn't move anymore. Ming Yu took Lu Li with him and ran to the right. The thing was, the space here was stable. The coverage of Ming Yu's force was weakened. When they were more than 300 feet away from the gargoyle rats, the rats could move again and chased after them. Swish, swish. When the gargoyle rats got closer, Mingyu used force again. Then he unsheathed the silver sword on his back and hacked forward. A streak of silver light whooshed across the sky and hit a gargoyle rat. With a booming sound, the gargoyle rat was smashed away. Blood oozed out from its body. But after it rolled around for a bit, it dashed back again. So strong. Luli was shocked. He had an idea and asked Mingyu to let him go. With a white glare, Luli began to move around. In an instant, he was surrounded by human shadows. Luli had 100 clones, so there were people everywhere. Let's go. Luli rushed back to Mingyu, who rushed forward at once. The three gargoyle rats were confused. They rushed towards Luli's shadow, but missed their target. The shadows disappeared one by one. By the time all 100 shadows disappeared, Mingyu and Luli were more than a mile away. The three gargoyle rats could no longer keep track of them. Young master, you have made great progress in your apparition skill. But I think psychic power can detect the real body? Mingyu exclaimed. It was already horrifying to have 100 clones. If psychic power couldn't detect the real body, then it would be a marvelous skill. Luli forced a smile and said, I haven't mastered it yet. I need more time. They moved on. Luli put down marks along the way so that Yu Huashan could catch up with them. After the time for one incense stick to burn, they ran into another group of gargoyle rats. This time, there were more than 10, not 3. Luli released his apparition skill at once and generated 100 clones. Mingyu took Luli with him, and they snuck behind a small hill. The gargoyle rats couldn't tell the real body from the fake one. They all rushed towards the shadows. Luli and Mingyu took the chance to run away. Mingyu was relieved to be able to escape this time. Luckily, he had Luli. Otherwise, he would be exhausted even though he could use force to suppress the gargoyle rats along the way. More importantly, there would be more and more gargoyle rats. Mingyu couldn't kill all of them, and the result would be unpredictable. Just like that, the two kept running. Due to the fact that they would run into gargoyle rats from time to time, they had to change directions many times. They had no idea where they were now. They could only choose which direction was safe. Many times, the two tried to find a place to hide and wait for Yu Huashan and Little White to catch up. But after a while, more gargoyle rats came, which made them miserable. Ah, run, run. From the distance came some miserable cries. The purple haze was so thick that the two couldn't see clearly. Mingyu looked at Luli, who said after some thoughts, Let's go and have a look. With apparition skill and Mingyu's force, they could get rid of more than 100 gargoyle rats quickly. They wouldn't be in danger. If they could, they would. Saving a life was better than building a 7-story pagoda. Chapter 322. There were many gargoyle rats up ahead, dozens of them. There were more than 30 of them, and some of them were eternal realm escorts from the Pavilion of Delicacy. Some of them had been bitten by the gargoyle rats and had gone mad from the poison. They were attacking their own people with their fangs and claws. Even though they were poisoned and turned into rats, they still had their abilities. They could not use Xian energy, but they were fast enough. When Lu Li and Mingyu arrived, they saw a group of people running towards them in fear. At the front of the group were 3 old men with 2 young masters and a young lady. They were running with all their strength, and fear was written all over their faces. When they saw Lu Li and Mingyu, the young lady and the 2 young masters were overjoyed. One of the young masters shouted, Help us! Help us! We don't want to die." The young lady had tears on her face. She looked at Lu Li and Mingyu pitifully. An old man of the Eternal Realm shouted, as if he had seen a life-saving straw, "Lord, young master, we are for the Han family of the Mystic Fire region. These 3 are our young masters and young ladies. Please save us. The Han family will reward you handsomely." Lu Li and Mingyu didn't know where the Mystic Fire region was, and they didn't expect any reward. Lu Li nodded and said, "Go on. We will help you stop the gargoyle rats." "Thank you, young master." They were overjoyed. They had more than a dozen warriors of the Eternal Realm, but only 2 of them were at the peak. How could they stop so many gargoyle rats? Mingyu shot forward and saw a group of black rats charging towards him. He immediately released his force, and the heavenly ghoul rats that were charging towards him stopped in their tracks. Roar, roar, the poisoned rat men rushed over. Two of them were at the eternal realm, but they couldn't use Xian energy, so they were weakened. Mingyu and Lu Li cooperated well. Lu Li moved, and 100 clones came out. Furthermore, he had been loitering nearby, filling the entire area with his ghostly shadow. Swish, swish, Mingyu made his move. The sword on his back unsheathed, and streaks of light shot out, slicing all the rat men in half. He released force from time to time to suppress the gargoyle rats so that they could not get close. Lu Li's clones were still there. The gargoyle rats had to keep attacking while Lu Li kept releasing clones. The gargoyle rats were circling around so that they couldn't go after the ones running away. Let's go. All the rat men have been killed. The group of people must be more than a mile away. Lu Li and Ming, you left many clones and retreated quietly. The two of them quickly caught up with the troops in front of them. What made them speechless was they encountered gargoyle rats again. Even though there were only 4 of them, it was still difficult for them to deal with them. Seeing Lu Li and Mingyu flying over, everyone was overjoyed. Mingyu moved closer after some thoughts and suppressed the 4 gargoyle rats with force. The old man at the peak of the eternal realm was sure that the gargoyle rats could not attack. He looked at Lu Li and said, "Young master, can you take our young lady and young master away? Our deaths are not to be regretted, but the 3 young ladies are still young and are the hope of the family. If they follow us, they will die sooner or later." Lu Li could not agree to this request. They would be doomed even if they ran into a large group of gargoyle rats with the 3 burdens. He also wouldn't go with this group of people. That would only be a burden to them. Lu Li thought about it and said, "I am sorry, but we cannot take 3. We are powerless." Lu Li's words made the young lady and the 2 young masters' expressions turn gloomy. The old man at the peak of the eternal realm sensed a glimmer of hope from Lu Li's words. He looked at the weak girl next to him and said to Lu Li, "Then can you take our young lady and leave? The Han family will never forget your kindness." The young lady seemed to be only 13 or 14 years old. She was a weak girl with beautiful looks, but she was so frightened that she was in a mess. Lu Li was hesitating. The young lady was only at the later stage of the Soul Pond realm. She was a burden to them. Yu Huashan and Little White hadn't come back yet, and there was no good hiding place nearby. The 2 of them didn't dare to stay in one place. They had to run on. What if they were implicated? But he looked at the young lady and saw her eyes full of expectation. Then he looked at Mingyu. Eventually, he didn't make up his mind and nodded. What surprised Lu Li was that the other 2 young masters of about 14 or 15 years old didn't show any dissatisfaction when Lu Li agreed to take the young lady with him. It seemed that this young lady had an honorable status in the Han family. The old man at the peak of the eternal realm was overjoyed. He ran over with the young lady, bowed and asked, "Thank you, young master. Can you tell us your name so that the Han family can repay you in the future?" "My name is Lu Li," Lu Li said casually. Then he added after some thoughts, "It's okay for me to take the young lady with me. But if the situation is critical and I cannot protect her, then the Han family cannot blame me." "Of course." The old man at the peak of the eternal realm nodded and said to the young lady, "Young lady, thank young Master Lu." The old man knew very well that his young lady would be safer with Lu Li than with them. They had seen Mingyu's force. He could suppress a large number of gargoyle rats and hold on for a while. The girl bowed and said to Lu Li gratefully, "Thank you, young Master Lu, for your kindness." "Thank you, my lord. You go first. I will help you." Mingyu waved his hand. The warrior at the peak of the eternal realm made up his mind and ran away with the others. Lu Li used the same trick. He generated 100 clones to interfere with the gargoyle rat's judgment. Then, Mingyu carried Lu Li with one hand and grabbed Hanyu with the other and left. Miss Hanyue was very scared along the way. She was a little nervous when she was with 2 strange men. These 2 men were even wearing ferocious masks. She was young and inexperienced, so it was natural for her to be scared. Lu Li looked at Hanyu, suddenly took off his mask, smiled at her, and said, "Don't be afraid. We're not bad guys. We will protect you." Looking at Lu Li's gentle smile, Han Yu somehow felt relieved. She nodded. Ming Yu led the way coldly. Soon, they ran into more gargoyle rats. There were too many gargoyle rats in the wild. They were everywhere. Nowhere was safe. Lu Li and Ming Yu didn't have much of an impact with one more person. They worked together to confuse the gargoyle rats and then left quietly. Roar, roar. 2 hours later, Lu Li ran into more than a dozen rat men. 7 or 8 of them were eternal realm escorts from the Pavilion of Delicacy. There were dozens of skeletons nearby, but their flesh and blood were all eaten. Ming Yu killed all the rat men mercilessly. He and Lu Li looked at each other, and their hearts were weighed down. It seemed that not many could survive this time. Whoosh! Chapter 323. Yu Huaxin and Little White were back. As soon as Lu Li crushed the jade talisman, Yu Huaxin went back at once. But Lu Li and Ming Yu took many detours. Even though Lu Li had left marks along the way, Yu Huaxin had a hard time finding them. Squeak, squeak, Little White flew over and threw itself into Lu Li's arms, barking affectionately. Han Yu looked at Little White with curiosity. Yu Huaxin bowed and said, "Young master, I am late. I'm sorry to have troubled you." "It's okay." Lu Li waved his hand and said to Yu Huaxin, "How powerful is Little White? What if there are hundreds of gargoyle rats attacking?" "Ha ha." Yu Huaxin gave Little White a thumbs up and said, "Even tens of thousands of them wouldn't dare to get within 300 feet of Little White, let alone hundreds." "Okay, let's go and save people." Lu Li waved his hand. He didn't have the ability to save people before. Now that Little White was back, he wanted to have a look around. It would be good to save as many people as possible. Lu Li asked Ming Yu to carry Han Yu and Yu Huaxin to wander around. Han Yu stared at Lu Li and the others. She didn't understand what Lu Li and Yu Huaxin were talking about. Was this little beast that powerful? Squeak, squeak. They ran into more than a dozen gargoyle rats after just 3 miles. This time, neither Ming Yu nor Yu Huaxin did anything. Little White stood on Lu Li's shoulder, its mane standing up. It was emitting a strange chi and energy. It made 2 strange noises which made all the gargoyle rats lie on the ground in fear. "Ha ha ha ha." Lu Li laughed. He waved his hand to let Yu Huaxin and Ming Yu move on. Han Yu's mouth was wide open. She looked at Little White in surprise, as if she had seen a ferocious beast. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, Yu Huaxin stopped and shouted, "There are people over there. Let's go." Lu Li hurried over. A group of people were running like crazy. 2 warriors of the Eternal Realm stayed behind to stop the gargoyle rats. "Gather around us." Lu Li shouted when he saw people running to all directions. Yu Huaxin followed him and shouted, "Come over if you don't want to die." Whoosh, whoosh, people rushed over from the distance. They were overjoyed to see the 2 noble Lord Realm warriors. Many were so excited that they almost cried. Ming Yu flew out and released his force, suppressing the heavenly ghost rats and killing 6 or 7 rat folk. A youth saw Ming Yu kill a rat man and immediately cried out, "Uncle, don't kill my uncle. That's not your uncle." Lu Li threw him a cold glance and said, "Your big uncle is dead. This is a rat man. Leaving him alive will cause more deaths." When a young man saw his uncle being sliced into 2 by Ming Yu, his body went limp and he knelt on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. There were also a few relatives of the rat folk who had been killed who looked like they were in pain, but Lu Li didn't feel much. Lu Ling said that death was the ultimate destination for warriors. Anyone who embarked on the path of Wu Dao must be prepared for death. "Go!" Making sure that there was no one around, Lu Li waved his hand and led the more than a dozen warriors forward. Little White released some energy to suppress the gargoyle rats. Previously, Lu Li didn't want to expose Little White, but in order to save people, he couldn't care less. The only one that could take Little White away was Jiang Hao. Lu Li learned from his conversation with Jiang Hao that he wouldn't do such a thing. Since he hadn't met Jiang Hao yet, Luli didn't have time to worry. With more than a dozen people, Luli slowed down. He ran into gargoyle rats quite often along the way. But with Little White, everything was fine. None of the gargoyle rats dared to chase after them. By the time it was getting dark, there were more than 50 people in the team. Luli also ran into the people of the Hanyu. The two young masters were still alive, but only half of the team was left. How tragic the situation was. There were caves of ghosts erupting on the way. Luckily, they were lucky. None of the caves of ghosts erupted near them. Purple Xian crystals and soul crystals could be seen everywhere, but nobody dared to collect them. Luli was their only hope. Nobody dared to leave Luli. Yu Huashan didn't care. As long as there were purple Xian crystals and soul crystals, he would collect them. It seemed that he had gained a lot during this time. Let's find a place to rest. It was getting dark on the Pegasus horses. With Little White, they didn't have to worry about the gargoyle rats anymore. They were exhausted, so Luli decided to let them rest for the night. They found a mountain. They didn't set up tents. They just sat on the ground at the foot of the mountain to rest. Some of them had interspatial rings with some food and water. They distributed the food to the others, and they ate in silence. Luli leaned against a rock and closed his eyes to rest. Little White was curled up in his arms. Yu Huashan was on guard, and Mingyu rested for a while. Soon, it was getting dark. Dark clouds loomed over the city. It was so dark that it was frightening and suffocating. It was so hot and stuffy that it seemed it was going to rain. Boom! An hour later, there was a bolt of lightning in the sky, lighting up the entire night sky. Then a sudden clap of thunder woke Luli up. "It is going to be a storm," Luli murmured. But he didn't take out his tent or dig cave. The tent could not withstand storm. Soon, it was filled with water. As for digging a cave, what if there was a cave of ghosts erupting in the cave? By then, none of them would be able to run away. They would have to stand in the rain. Splash, splash. After a while, the rain poured down. The rain was so heavy that it hurt people's faces. Thunder roared and lightning flashed in the sky. The wind was howling. In the distance, there was a purple glare. Nobody could sleep in peace tonight. Ah, Brother Hao. Right at that moment, from the east came a miserable shout. It was earth-shaking, filled with endless sorrow and anger. Even though it was some distance away, people could hear it clearly. Brother Hao, Jiang Hao. Luli and Yu Huashan looked at each other. Their pupils contracted. Judging from a shout, this person might be a powerful warrior of the Noble Lord realm. There were only 3 warriors of the Noble Lord realm. If someone called Brother Hao, then Jiang Hao might be dead. Let's go. Luli stood up at once. He wanted to take Yu Huashan to have a look. But on second thought, what if they ran into gargoyle rats? Yu Huashan thought about it and said, "Everyone, come with us." Nobody dared to have any objection. Without Luli, Yu Huashan, Mingyu, and the others would all die. Nobody dared to say anything. They ran towards the east in the darkness and the storm. Boom, boom, boom. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, there came some noises of explosion from the east. Luli and the others sped up. After they climbed up a small hill, there was a flash of lightning in the sky, lighting up the surroundings. Luli and the others could see clearly the people in the distance. There were not many people there, only 9. 8 of them were fighting against gargoyle rats, and there were many dead bodies around. Behind them, a lady in a red dress was kneeling on the ground, holding a dead body in her arms and sobbing. Jiang Qiling. Luli recognized her right away. But after the flash of lightning, the place was swallowed up by darkness again. Luli waved his hand and led the others over. When they were close enough, there was another flash of lightning that lit up the surroundings. Luli and the others could see clearly what was happening in front of them. There was only one Noble Lord Realm warrior, Jiang Yan. He was fighting hard with Jiang Hong and several warriors at the peak of the Eternal Realm. There were many gargoyle rats nearby, about 70 or 80 of them. There were also 30 dead bodies of gargoyle rats and 4 or 5 warriors. Jiang Qiling was kneeling on the ground in a red dress. The left side of her dress was torn, revealing her white thighs. But she didn't know. She was holding a dead body. It was Jiang Hao. He was not breathing. Jiang Qiling's eyes were closed. She looked like she was in pain. Tears flowed down from her eyes and mixed with the rain. Her body was trembling and her hand was shaking. She kept murmuring, "Grandpa, Grandpa, I am wrong. I am wrong. Wake up, wake up. I will not fool around anymore. As long as you can wake up, I will listen to you. I will listen to you. Wake up, wake up." Chapter 324. Jiang Hao was dead. He wasn't bitten by gargoyle rats. He committed suicide. To protect Jiang Qiling, he was bitten by gargoyle rats. When he knew he couldn't stand the poison, he exploded his soul pond and died. The 6 bodies were all poisoned. 2 of them were killed by Jiang Hao, and the other 4 died by exploding their soul ponds. They would rather self-detonate than become rat men, turning into walking corpses and harming their own people. Jiang Qiling did make a move. It was just that she had used too many bloodline skills, and her soul was too weak. Jiang Hao didn't allow her to do it. Jiang Hao had been carrying Jiang Qiling. To protect her from being bitten by the gargoyle rats, he took a hit for her. In the end, he died from the poison and his soul pond exploded. Jiang Qiling was sad. Her grandpa spoiled her since she was a kid. This time, when she sneaked into the iron-armored ship, her grandpa didn't send her back. He let her do whatever she wanted along the way. Little did he know that Jiang Hao died at the Gargoyle Mountain because of Jiang Qiling. Jiang Qiling blamed herself. Her sorrow and guilt didn't seem to be fake. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and rain poured down. A beautiful lady holding a dead body and crying into the sky was breathtaking. Luli rushed over in silence. Little White released its chi and energy to suppress the gargoyle rats. Seeing that the gargoyle rats didn't attack, Jiang Yin and the others looked at Lu Li in surprise. Jiang Qiling didn't pay much attention to Lu Li when she saw the group of people coming over. Instead, when she noticed that Lu Li had suppressed the gargoyle rats so easily, she glared at Lu Li and shouted, "Why didn't you come earlier? If you had, my grandpa wouldn't have died. Saving you is a favor. Not saving you is my duty." Lu Li coldly used Jiang Qiling's words. Then he felt sorry for her, so he explained, "Lady Qi, we heard your voices and came over. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to find you. The dead are gone. My condolences, Lady Qi." Lu Li winked at Jiang Yin, who understood. He rushed over and knocked Jiang Qiling out with a karate chop. Jiang Qiling was not in her right mind. Now that she was agitated, she would commit suicide if he didn't knock her out. All the bodies were collected and put into the interspatial ring to be buried. There was no air circulation in the spatial ring, so the corpse would not decompose so quickly. Under White E's deterrence, the gargoyle rat could no longer move. The group quickly retreated and found a place to rest. After chatting with Jiang Yin for a while, Lu Li learned that the other noble lord realm warrior, Jiang Ming, could not be contacted at the moment because he was covering the rear. Lu Li was afraid that Jiang Ming was also in danger. A warrior of the eternal realm next to Jiang Yin vaguely raised a question. If Lu Li could suppress the gargoyle rats, why didn't he do anything in the valley? If they had suppressed it within the valley, there wouldn't have been so many casualties. Little White was not in the valley at that time. Lu Li threw him a casual glance and explained. Yu Huashen and Ming Yu's eyes turned cold. Jiang Yin reprimanded repeatedly. That person hurriedly apologized. Lu Li, on the other hand, didn't mind. So many people had died this time, but he didn't feel guilty. The iron-armored ship did not belong to him. Instead, they paid the Xian crystals. The Pavilion of Delicacy had the responsibility and obligation to protect them. He was not a god, and he had no responsibility or obligation to protect everyone. So many people were dying in the world every second. How many could he protect? How many could he save? The rain kept pouring. They sat in the rain for an entire night in silence. The rain stopped at dawn. It was late in the morning. After Lu Li and the others had some food, they set off to look for the survivors. Jiang Qiling was still in a coma. What happened last night must have been a big blow to her. Her mind must have been damaged, so she could not wake up. After a day, Lu Li and the others had found nearly 100 people. There were less than 200 people in the team in total. After such a long time, there were probably not many people left who could survive. They continued to camp at night. At midnight, Jiang Qiling finally woke up. Luckily, she didn't make a scene. She just asked some questions and then hugged her knees and cried silently. She fell asleep again after crying for 2 hours. The next day, they continued to wander around and found more than a dozen people. They did run into many poisoned rat men and bones. There were also many corpses that had turned into skeletons. Who knew if Jiang Ming's body was among them? After nightfall, Lu Li found a small valley and decided to set up camp here. Those that couldn't be found for 2 days must be dead. It was pointless to go out with a group of people. Lu Li began to cultivate and consume soul crystals. Yu Huashan wandered around nearby to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. Mingyu stayed by Lu Li's side to protect him. Little White didn't go out. Yu Huashan gave Lu Li more than 3,000 soul crystals. Lu Li consumed hundreds of them. He had more than 4,000 soul crystals on him, enough for him to cultivate for a long time. The eruption of the Caves of Ghosts had weakened. That being said, the Gargoyle Mountain was too large and the gravity was still horrifying. It was not realistic to leave the Gargoyle Mountain on foot. The Gargoyle Mountain was a huge mountain. It would take an iron-armored ship half a month to fly at full speed. For the next few days, Jiang Yin would go out by himself from time to time, trying to find more survivors or Jiang Ming. Sometimes, he would look for Jiang Ming, but every time, he would return dejectedly. There was no one alive outside. Less than 200 of the more than 1,000 were left. Jiang Hao was dead, and less than 60 eternal realm escorts of the Pavilion of Delicacy survived. It was a tragic event. Jiang Qiling behaved herself these days. She stayed in her tent, not making any noise or seeing anyone. Lu Li didn't have the mood to mind her. He focused on consuming soul crystals. On the 5th day, Lu Li suddenly opened his eyes. There was a glint of surprise in his eyes. The silver dragon bloodline had been absorbing the white energy from the soul crystals, and some of the demon's memory had been transferred to him. More importantly, the memory contained all the demon's understanding of the mirror image profound meaning, including the memory of integrating apparition. Lu Li was overjoyed. Profound meaning was something that could only be understood but not explained. Since he had the complete memory of the demon, it would be more likely for him to learn this profound meaning. Lu Li had figured out, without understanding the mirror image profound meaning, it would be hard for him to release this skill. He had been consuming soul crystals just for this moment. He didn't expect that the silver dragon bloodline would really transfer the demon's memory. Lu Li didn't care about anything else. He began to study the demon's memory at once and try to integrate it with his apparition skill so that he could release that skill. However, he had only been cultivating for half a day when he heard some hurried footsteps outside. Then an escort of the Pavilion of Delicacy shouted from outside the tent, "Young Master Lu, Lady Qi has committed suicide. Third Commander wants you to go over." Committed suicide? Lu Li opened his eyes. He felt helpless. He got up and walked out after some thoughts. He followed the escort to Jiang Qiling's tent. A group of people had already gathered there. Lu Li walked into Jiang Qiling's tent. Her face was pale. The vein on her wrist was cut open and put into a jar. The jar contained bloody rose. The jar was filled with blood, and it was overflowing. Jiang Qiling didn't pass out. Her eyes were unfocused, like a person who had lost her soul. P.S. The result of the illegal arbitration of the South Sea is out. This is too much. For the first time, the war is so close to us. When a day comes when Dragon Emperor of Annihilation stops updating, the old demon will go to the front line with a butcher's knife. If the war really broke out, the old demon would support the war to the end, even if he had to go bankrupt. We love peace, but the descendants of the Huaxiao are not afraid of war, and they are willing to die. Chapter 325. Jiang Qiling had changed her clothes. She was all white, and her hair was tied up with a white band. There was no jewelry on her. It was as if she was in mourning clothes. Luli could tell from the unfocused look in her eyes that she really wanted to die this time. If he didn't handle this well, she would be begging for death next time, even if she was lucky this time. Jiang Hong was standing on the side with some gauze and healing pellets in his hands, but he didn't dare to move. When Luli came in, he worked up the courage to grab Jiang Qiling's hand again, trying to stop the bleeding. Jiang Qiling moved. She didn't move her hand. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Hong. What kind of look was that? Empty, cold, horrifying, without any emotion. Jiang Hong didn't have a high status in the Jiang family. He didn't dare to move after being looked at by Jiang Qiling. He looked to Lu Li for help. The other warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy were also looking at Lu Li. Only he could control Jiang Qiling now. Save what? She has lost her heart. You can save her body, but can you save her soul? Lu Li said coldly. He waved his hand to the escorts of the Pavilion of Delicacy and said, "Go find a place with good feng shui and bury your young lady." They looked at each other, thinking they had heard it wrong. Then they all looked like they were about to cry. Was Lu Li here to help or to make trouble? No. Lu Li suddenly remembered something and said, "We can't bury her here. There are gargoyle rats everywhere. Your young lady's body will be eaten. Her flesh and blood will be eaten bit by bit until only her bones are left. Or her bones will be eaten as well. Put her body in your interspatial ring and bury her at the Pavilion of Delicacy." Young Master Lu? Jiang Hong almost knelt to Lu Li. Jiang Qiling was begging for death. Was Lu Li trying to make her die faster by saying all this? Lu Li ignored Jiang Hong. He looked at Jiang Qiling coldly and said, "Lady Qi, I am here to see you off. As a matter of fact, don't kill yourself by cutting your wrists. That is not a good move. You're quite powerful. It will take hours for you to bleed to death. We must be tired waiting here, right? Let me teach you how to die." Before Jiang Hong could say anything, Lu Li continued, "Do you know how to explode your soul pond?" Just like that, his soul was scattered, and he died a simple death. I don't think you know this move. Why don't we retreat first, and you detonate your divine sense C? But if you do that, your body will explode into pieces, and you won't be able to leave a whole corpse. At that time, you won't even be able to tell your face apart. Let me think. All right, you can smash his head with your palm. That way, it won't be too painful. That's not good either. Your head will be crushed. After all, you're a girl. Even if you die, you have to take care of your looks. Should he stick an iron needle into the soul pond from the back of his head? This is good. You can die instantly, and it won't damage your beautiful face. Jiang Hong, prepare a big iron needle for your young miss. We'll send her on her way. They were speechless. Yu Huaxin and Ming Yu turned their faces away as if to say they didn't know Lu Li. Jiang Hong almost cried. He looked at her nervously, not daring to blink, fearing that she would really commit suicide, as Lu Li said. "Jiang Qiling," Lu Li suddenly shouted. His voice was so loud that everyone, including Jiang Qiling, trembled. Lu Li continued angrily, "If you want to die, then die now. Don't let us suffer with you. You are a good-for-nothing, a coward. What is the point of living like this? If you want to go with your grandpa, go ahead. I want to see how you can face your grandpa when you go to the underworld." Finally, there was some light in Jiang Qiling's eyes, but it was shame and anger. She moved her lips, trying to say something, but in the end, she said nothing. She just stared at Lu Li like an angry lion cub. Lu Li stared back at Jiang Qiling, not to be outdone. He suddenly took off his mask, looked at Jiang Qiling with mockery and shouted, "What? You don't want to admit defeat? You are not a good-for-nothing? Not a coward? You are a man whose lover is dead. You want to die, but you can't. Your grandpa has been dead for a few days, and you cut your wrist for half a day, but you can't die. You are not a good-for-nothing? If you're not a coward, then what are you? Suicide? Anyone who commits suicide is a coward, a good-for-nothing. A good-for-nothing who doesn't have the courage to face the present and only wants to run away." The more Lu Li talked, the angrier he became. It was as if he wanted Jiang Qiling to die as soon as possible. He even took out some water from his interspatial ring to drink. Then he threw the bottle away and continued, "You are not a good-for-nothing or a coward. Prove it to us. Prove it to your grandpa." You hate your father. You should work hard on cultivation. When you are more powerful than your father, tell him to go to your lover's grave and kowtow. Your grandpa died in battle. He is a hero. You have the ability to bury your grandpa in the best cemetery so that future generations can worship him. You don't have the courage. You don't have the determination or the ability. So, you are a good-for-nothing. Jiang Qiling's chest was heaving. She was so angry that her blood was pumping faster. Blood oozed out from her wrist. Jiang Hong was trembling in fear. Jiang Qiling thought of something and said, "What if I can do it?" Ha 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 ha. Lu Li laughed and said, "If you can make your father go to your lover's grave and make all the people of the Central Plains worship your grandpa, I will do whatever you want." Okay. Jiang Qiling suddenly stood up. She was shaking because of the loss of blood. Jiang Hong hurried to help her up. Jiang Qiling looked at Lu Li with a cold smile and said, "If I can do these two things, Lu Li, I want you to kneel down and wash my feet in front of everyone." Ha! Ha! Lu Li put on his mask and walked out. At the door, he turned back and said, "If you have the ability, I don't mind if I kneel down and wash your feet for you." Jiang Qiling, I am not belittling you, but you can't do it. Lu Li left in a carefree manner, as if he didn't care about Jiang Qiling's life. Yu Huashen and Ming Yu followed him out. It was dead silent. Jiang Hong and the others didn't even dare to breathe. After a while, Jiang Qiling reached out her hand. Jiang Hong was relieved. He quickly bandaged Jiang Qiling's wound. Jiang Qiling didn't even look at her hand. She kept looking at Lu Li's back and murmured, "Lu Li, just you wait. I will make you kneel down and wash my feet. Just you wait." "Young master, you are awesome." Ming Yu gave Lu Li a thumbs up after they entered the tent. Yu Huashen nodded as well. Both of them were smart enough to see through Lu Li's goading at once. "My sister taught me that." Lu Li calmed himself down and said, "If a person wants to die, it is hard to persuade her. Only by stimulating her, angering her, and finding her a target can she have the desire to live. Or find her a reason to live." "Yes." Ming Yu nodded. Then he laughed and said, "Young master, you want her to be more powerful than her father? The master of the Pavilion of Delicacy must be at least at the peak of the human sovereign realm. Can she do that in her lifetime? Ha ha ha. So, she will not die." Chapter 326. Biting the hand that feeds you is a common occurrence. Whitey was so small, and it was obvious that it had just been born. How could it suppress the gargoyle rat at such a young age? According to his estimation, Little White's rank was at least level 6, and it was very likely to be level 7. 7th-rank beasts were beast emperors. Once they reached adulthood, they would be comparable to cultivators of the Renwang realm. They could even easily suppress cultivators of the Renwang realm. Most importantly, Little White was very obedient and had been tamed since it was young. This kind of Shin beast was hard to come by. Any faction would be envious if they knew about this. Obtaining Little White would be equivalent to obtaining a divine beast. Mystical beasts usually had a very long lifespan. The higher the rank, the longer the lifespan. Even though Whitey was a 6th-rank beast, it could easily live for a few thousand years. If Little White was at the 7th level, then the family or force that obtained Little White would be worry-free for thousands of years. Of course, this was all Lu Li's guess. Perhaps he had thought too badly of these people. Still, it was better to be safe than sorry. Lu Li decided to leave as soon as the warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy arrived. The caves of ghosts were erupting less and less recently. The gravity was obviously weakening. As long as there was no gravity, they could easily leave the Gargoyle Mountain and find a city to teleport to the Mystic Armor region. The following days were peaceful. Jiang Qiling did not cause any more trouble. She had been resting and cultivating from time to time. Lu Li had given her 2 goals, so that she would have a reason to live. The 2 targets irritated her. She felt suffocated. Once this belief was formed, with her insane aptitude, she would progress at a horrifying speed in the future. Yu Huashen often went out to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals, but there were not many left. Luli paid no attention to him. He focused on trying to understand the demon's memory from the silver dragon in his soul pond. In this memory, there was a complete understanding of the mirror image profound meaning and how to integrate it with apparition. Luli was very excited and couldn't wait to learn all of this. Time passed day by day. There were no more ghost caves erupting nearby, and the gravity was getting weaker. Logically speaking, the people from the Pavilion of Delicacy should be here soon. Luli came out from cultivation once and asked Yuhuashan to stay on guard nearby to see if the Pavilion of Delicacy would send someone over. Once someone came, they could leave immediately. 3 days later, a jade talisman in Mingyu's hand suddenly shattered. Mingyu woke Luli up at once. Luli opened his eyes, knowing that the warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy were here and it was time for them to leave. Luli left a letter and walked out with Mingyu. Mingyu took out an ancient chariot and flew away with Luli. The inhibition formation on the chariot was activated and they disappeared from everyone's sight. Young Master Lu has left? Young Master Lu has left. Luli and Mingyu were so fast that nobody had time to react. Only when the inhibition formation on the chariot was activated and they disappeared in midair did many people shout in surprise. Jiang Hong flew out and scanned the surroundings with his divine will. However, the gravity had become extremely weak recently. The ancient war chariot was very fast, and he could no longer detect it. Young Lord Lu, Jiang Hong shouted anxiously. Jiang Qiling was alarmed. She came out, but she didn't seem to be in a panic. She took a few glances and then walked toward Lu Li's tent. When she saw the letter on the bed, she muttered, "At least you have a conscience." Jiang Hong came in as well. Jiang Qiling had already opened the letter. There is only one sentence written on it. "I have something to do, and I have to leave now. Lady Qi, we will meet again in the martial world." Jiang Qiling put the letter into her interspatial ring. She looked at Jiang Hong, who was in a hurry, and said coldly, "What are you panicking about? The Pavilion of Delicacy is here." Jiang Qiling was a smart girl. She knew that the Pavilion of Delicacy would be here by now. She knew Luli well, and she knew that he would leave early. After all, that small beast was precious, and Lu Li's identity could bring him trouble. Luli never liked troublesome people. He could leave the Gargoyle Mountain easily with 2 noble Lord Realm warriors, so he would leave early. As she expected, in the time for just half an incense stick to burn, 2 huge iron-armored ships arrived from the distance with the symbol of the Pavilion of Delicacy at the front. There were 3 noble Lord Realm warriors and rows of Eternal Realm warriors standing in front of each ship. The warriors on the ground were relieved. The powerful warriors of the Pavilion of Delicacy were here. They were safe now, but many people were saddened by the thought of their dead families and families. Whoosh, 6 noble Lord Realm warriors flew down with a group of warriors. They dropped to one knee in front of Jiang Qiling and said, "Greetings, young lady." Jiang Qiling answered coldly. An old man cupped his fists and said, "Young lady, the master has learned about what happened here. He is sad. Please don't be too sad. He wants you to go back to the Mountain of Delicacy at once. We will take care of the rest." Jiang Qiling was surprisingly cooperative. She looked at Jiang Hong and said, "Come back with me. Let them take care of the rest." Jiang Hao's body was with Jiang Hong. Jiang Hong nodded and boarded an iron-armored ship with Jiang Qiling. 3 other noble Lord Realm warriors came with warriors as well. The iron-armored ship was here to take Jiang Qiling back. With a glare, it turned around and flew to the west. Jiang Qiling stood on the deck, looked to the east, and murmured, "See you in the martial world. Luli, don't die. When I become a master of the Pavilion of Delicacy, you will have to wash my feet and kowtow to me." Luli was more than 30 miles away. The gravity was still affecting him, so the chariot didn't fly high or fast. Luli asked Mingyu to control the speed on purpose. Yuhuashan didn't come up. He was collecting purple Xian crystals and soul crystals with the chariot following him. Little White was on the chariot, which could suppress the gargoyle rats. Without Little White, it would be difficult for Yuhuashan to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. They had to go through the Gargoyle Mountain as well, so they wouldn't waste such a good chance. If it weren't for the fact that Luli was in a hurry to go back to the Liu family, he could stay here for a couple of months. He could turn the Gargoyle Mountain upside down, and he couldn't imagine how many purple Xian crystals and soul crystals he could get. However, after the ride at the Gargoyle Mountain, the Pavilion of Delicacy and other forces nearby would send people over to collect purple Xian crystals and soul crystals. Luli was snatching food from Tiger's mouth. How could Luli compete with the Pavilion of Delicacy after Jiang Qiling went back? Luli made up his mind. He walked to the east and collected as many purple Xian crystals and soul crystals as he could. He asked Mingyu to control the chariot and observe the surroundings while he sat on the chariot with his legs crossed to continue his cultivation. The further east they went, the more purple Xian crystals and soul crystals there were. Since nobody had been here before, many purple Xian crystals and soul crystals were left uncollected. There were treasures everywhere. Yu Huashan didn't rest for a moment. He traveled day and night to collect. He knew very well that the more purple Xian crystals and soul crystals he could get, the sooner they could arrive at the Liu family. By that time, Luli could go back to the Liu family. Yu Huashan could at least regain his freedom, if not some benefits. Now, Yu Huashan had more than 200,000 purple Xian crystals, which was equivalent to more than 2 billion Xian crystals. He had nearly 1,000 soul crystals as well. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.